Hello and welcome to the EcoCast. Today's topic, supporting cloud environments. On this event, you'll hear from experts at Rubrik, Rapid7, Faction, Flexential, SolarWinds, Clumio, and Metallic. What an awesome lineup of some of the most innovative cloud companies in the world today. We've got a great show lined up for you. Thank you so much for joining us. If you're here to learn about the latest and greatest in cloud and how these solutions can help to make your IT organization more efficient, more agile, and more scalable, you're in the right place. My name is David Davis of Actual Tech Media, and I'm excited to be your moderator for today's EcoCast. Now, before we get started, just a few things that you should know about the event. We have some awesome prizes lined up. I'll talk about those in just a moment. But we want this to be an educational event, and we encourage your questions in the questions box. We'll be doing a dedicated Q&A session at the end of the event. In fact, we have a cool new prize related to the best question, which I'll talk about in just a moment. We also want this to be a social event. You can use the Twitter icon on the bottom of the screen to tweet directly from the console, and the hashtag for today's event will be automatically appended. We also have a number of resources available in the Handouts tab. I encourage you to check those out. There is a handout or link selected by each of today's expert presenters, so make sure that you click on those before you go to learn more about each of the solutions you'll hear about today. On today's EcoCast, we'll be awarding 3 Amazon $500 gift cards. The winner must be live in attendance to qualify, and I will be announcing the gift cards periodically throughout the event. There are a number of legalese, prize terms, and conditions that you should be aware of. You can find the full link to these in the Handouts tab. All prize winners must submit an IRS Form W-9 to Actual Tech Media. We'll reach out to prize winners via email after the event. Now, through the MegaCast and EcoCast event series, we have supported the charities you see here on the screen over the years, and generous prize winners on our events have chosen to donate their prizes to many of the selected charities that you see here on the screen. We do this in partnership with the Gorilla Guide Book Club. You can download free educational IT books at gorilla.guide. But thank you in advance to any of the prize winners who choose to donate their prize value to the charities you see here on the screen: the Hunger Project, Reading is Fundamental, International Rescue, Cancer Research Institute, and the PetSmart charities. On today's EcoCast, we'll be doing a cool new prize. This is the Best Question prize, and it's not just a single prize for the entire event. I'm talking about a prize selected for each of the Q&A sessions on the EcoCast. So we're looking at 6 presentations. That's 6 opportunities to win an Amazon $50 gift card. Prize winners must meet the Actual Tech Media prize policy. And we're doing this because we want to encourage questions. Like I said, we want to help solve your technology challenges, but we can't do that unless we hear what those challenges are and how we can help. So keep those good questions coming. The prize winners will be selected and contacted after the event. The hashtag for today's event is ATM EcoCast, and it will be automatically appended if you click on the Twitter icon on the bottom of the screen. You can follow Actual Tech Media on Twitter at Actual Tech Media, and me as well, David M. Davis. Subscribe to all the Actual Tech Media channels, YouTube, Facebook, and the 10 on Tech podcast. Some of the icons for these are on the top right-hand side of your audience console. We post all of our latest and greatest content over on LinkedIn, so if you pick one, just follow us there at the Actual Tech Media LinkedIn homepage. Now, before we do some poll questions and I introduce you to today's first presenter, I want to talk for just a few moments about today's topic, supporting cloud environments. So why is cloud important at all? Why are we talking about cloud? Well, that's because traditional legacy infrastructure can be inefficient, complex, costly, and increasingly, it's just not meeting the needs of today's agile and scalable businesses. So how does cloud help? Well, it provides greater efficiency. You don't have to implement the infrastructure yourself. You don't have to manage the data center. you can quickly and easily spin up applications and virtual machines in the cloud in seconds. It gives your business and IT organization the agility that you need, and it gives you infinite scalability. It doesn't take a month or 2 months to bring up a new application in the data center anymore because you're speccing out hardware, waiting for storage, racking it, and stacking it. You can spin up new applications in a few clicks of a mouse. There's also that pay as you go aspect, that utility based pricing model that allows you to move from the CapEx expenditure model to the OpEx model. And that's something that the executives at your company will probably like. It also allows the IT organization to focus on the business and its applications. And honestly, that's why we're here. That's what's most important. So, why so much confusion on cloud? Well, there's a lot of forms of cloud. There's private, there's public, there's hybrid, multi cloud, enterprise cloud. There's all sorts of as a service offerings. And there's a great difference between cloud offerings out there. Azure, AWS, GCP, they're not all the same. And you can't just simply move an instance from AWS to Azure or GCP by downloading it and uploading it like you might assume that you could. There's incompatibilities between on-premises images and cloud images. You can't just take, let's say, a Hyper-V virtual machine or a vSphere VM and just upload it to AWS. It doesn't work like that. There's also differences in management models between on-premises and off-premises. And that's why, in my opinion, this event is just so important. We're here to help you clear up confusion, get your questions answered, help to make you and your company more efficient, help to save you and your company time and money, and help to make your company more agile and competitive. In summary, to provide education on the latest and greatest cloud innovations. And with that, let's kick it off with a few poll questions related to cloud computing, and I'll share the results of each one of these with you so you can see how you stack up with your peers.
All right, our first poll question is on the screen and should be a simple question. That is, which public cloud are you using today? The answers there: AWS, Azure, Google, IBM, Oracle, or if obviously there's many other public clouds. If it's not there, drop it in the questions box and we can add it to the list for next time. I'll also share it with the audience. And the reason I'm asking this is I'm going to share the results, and then I'm going to ask you another question which has identical answers, but the question is, which public clouds do you foresee yourself using more of in the next 12 months? And we can kind of compare the results. So if you haven't done this before, just select the answer that corresponds to you and your company there on the screen. And like I said, it's a multi-select question, so you don't have to choose just one. Catherine responded that they're using Rackspace at their company. Awesome to hear. Good feedback. We can see if we can add that on the slide there, or add that on the poll for future. If anyone's having trouble with the poll, I encourage you to just push refresh on your web browser. Most of the time that will resolve it, and also recommend using Chrome. Chrome is the recommended web browser. If you have trouble, use an incognito or private browsing session. All right, let me go ahead and share the results of this one with you. And look at that, very interesting. 56% said they're using Azure today, followed by 49% with AWS, 23% Google, 6% IBM, 7% Oracle. So I'm just going to note the AWS and Azure, 49% and 56, 23 Google. And then let me go ahead and bring up the next poll. And again, it's the same answers here, but the question is, which public clouds do you see you and your company using more of in the next 12 months? So I'm curious to see if the results change here. All right, thank you everyone who is responding to this poll. Again, if you don't see the poll, push refresh. Make sure you're using Chrome, private browsing, incognito session. If you have any trouble, sometimes Chrome plugins block certain things. All right, lots of good feedback coming in. Thank you for those. Let's just get a few more. All right, thank you everyone who responded to that poll. Let me go ahead and share the results here. And looks like 53% said they see themselves using more of Azure in the next 12 months, 48% AWS, 22% Google. And so it looks like those numbers stayed roughly the same. Not too much change there. So interesting to see that Azure was a leader here on today's poll with hundreds of you voting. So great feedback. Thank you so much for sharing that. Next poll question on the screen, and that is, are you running any of the following at your company? Mid-range systems, mainframe systems, or maybe you're doing something called mainframe as a service, MFAAS. This is something I recently learned about. And so I kind of wanted to poll the audience out here. I had a feature presenter ask me, if very many of the folks on our events were using mid-range or mainframe systems today. And I said, I honestly have no idea, and I would like to find out myself. So I'm going to share the results of this poll with you as well, because there are some cool mainframe as a service offerings that I've just recently been learning about for anyone who's running a mid-range or mainframe system. Essentially, you can move it into the cloud, not move the physical piece of hardware, but it's a mid-range and mainframe running in the cloud that you can run your mid-range and mainframe applications on as a service, like a utility-based model. And you can get rid of your physical hardware, which I know for many of you out there carries a expensive maintenance contract and can be challenging to support. So thank you everyone who responded to this one. So take a look at that. 51% said no mainframe or mid-range of any type. 1% said using mainframe as a service today, but 33% said they're using mid-range systems. 24% still using mainframe systems. So very interesting to see. Thank you for sharing those results with us. We do appreciate that. And then last poll before I introduce you to our first presenter, and that is, we talked about cloud solutions. There's all different forms of cloud solutions. The question here is very broad. What's your time frame for if you're adding new cloud solutions? Could be monitoring, management, storage, disaster recovery, data protection, mainframe as a service, anything that you might be doing with the cloud in some shape or form. What's your time frame for adding new or updating your existing solutions? All right. Thank you, everyone who responded to that poll. We do appreciate that. And with that, I'm excited to kick off the EcoCast today with our first presenter. That is Mr. Leon Adato, head geek at SolarWinds. Leon, always great to have you on. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to get a chance to speak to everybody. So let me just kick things off. All right, there we go. So I want to welcome everyone to our topic today, which is the 4 steps to bridging your journey to Microsoft Azure. It'll probably be a little bit more than 4 steps, but 4 basic ideas. Now, this is a really big topic, and I've got about 20 minutes, which is not a lot of time. So the best I can hope to do in 20 minutes is irritate you. What I mean by that is that in the natural world, when an oyster gets a little grain of sand inside, it gets irritated, and it does one of 2 things. It either dies or it creates a pearl. Hopefully, there's one outcome that I'm going for. My goal today is not necessarily to tell you everything you need to know how to do this, but to irritate you just enough that you start to think about it and you want to start, looking into it and produce a pearl of technology. So that's the goal here. So once again, my name is Leon Adato, and yes, Head Geek is actually the title of my job. I actually took the job almost so unseen because of that. I've been in IT for about 30 years. I focused on monitoring and systems management for 20 of those years using a variety of tools, and I joined SolarWinds about 6 years ago as Head Geek, and that's what I do. So that's me. And you can find me on the Twitters, which I say to horrify my children, at Leon Adato. You can find me in a few other places as well. So what we're doing today is, again, talking about the ways of getting to or improving your experience in Azure and in the cloud in general. So that's really our goal here. So to kick things off, really dig into it, Before we ended up in this nightmare hellscape pandemic of a world, digital transformation was really a weird buzzword that nobody understood what it meant, or it meant a lot of things to different people. Now it's become a lot clearer. It basically means move my stuff to the cloud so everyone can get at it no matter where they are. And we've gotten really clear on that. Now the new difference is interesting because it resonates with management versus IT folks slightly differently. Businesses are coming to terms with the fact that things aren't going to snap back like rubber bands. We're in month, 10 of, people working from home largely and COVID continuing and things like that. And although we can see a light at the end of the tunnel, I think companies are realizing that even once things go back health-wise, they may not go back business-wise. And that's had an impact on the infrastructure. And again, management is understanding that in sort of a different way than us in IT, because for those of us in IT who've been around for more than, say, 15 minutes, oh my God, everything has changed is just another word for, oh, you mean it's Tuesday. Things change all the time. We're used to that, and we're used to sort of, shifting our perspective to deal with that. Most people have come to terms with cloud being a both-and operation rather than an either-or. And I just want you to notice that the continued on-prem growth, and the financial numbers make it clear that neither is going away. Just because people are moving to cloud does not mean that the on-premises stuff is getting packed up in a box and forgotten. A lot of what we dealt with or chose not to deal with or hoped would go away in terms of virtualization on-prem is still around in the cloud. There's still things that we have to deal with. But it's going to cost you a lot more to get it wrong in the cloud than it would cost you to get it wrong when things are earthed. And then the last point there, security. Oh my God, security. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we go. Here on the slide, I want to point out a couple of things. And I recognize that I'm speaking to you today one day after the keynote of reInvent, and even so, the data is behind me. AWS, Amazon may be the thing you say first when you're thinking about cloud, but Azure is the thing that people are actually using to run their workloads. That's not an endorsement. That's an observation of the facts on the ground. Once again, cloud and NOC are here to stay. Neither one is going away, although the mix of them may be different. And I do want to remind you that private cloud, that term that gets thrown around sometimes, that's really the way that IT managers convince executives that they're investing in cloud, but it's really just still in the NOC. And also it helps companies not make stupid technology mistakes along the way. So just, I want to debunk that a little bit. Private cloud is the stuff that's in your data center, but it seems cloudy a little bit. Okay. Here, what I want to highlight is just a couple of numbers on these surveys. What we're seeing is that, A, work is increasing, and tech pros don't feel like they have the skills to do the work. And businesses don't think that they have those skills either. I mean, it's kind of an agreement. As usual, there's no money, there's no training, and everything is constantly bursting into flames. That's, situation normal. Everything is just, a mess in terms of IT. But that's where we are. It does speak to the fact that companies need to think carefully about how they help their staff get the skills that they need. Yeah, consulting exists, but that's not a long-term solution for most people, and certainly not a lot of people in this situation. Meanwhile, moving along, the thing I want to say here is actually to bring up a quote that I heard last year at Cisco Live. One of the VPs said something that I think is brilliant and stuck with me all year. He said, loyalty to a brand has been replaced by loyalty to an application. Apps don't just support our business, they effectively are our business. And that has a huge impact in terms of things that are moving to the cloud and the way that businesses are thinking about their technology. The move to cloud and hybrid IT emphasizes this app-centric view of the world because hardware is becoming more invisible. That doesn't mean it's not there. It just means that we are disintermediating ourselves from it. And if not, the hardware is not if not becoming ephemeral. And because it's harder to get at that hardware, some businesses are just giving up on the idea of monitoring it at all. This makes me cry bitter tears at night into my pillow. That 23% you see in the corner there of businesses that won't monitor at all just makes me very, very sad. Because that's not the right way to go. You can't do it. And I'll talk more about that in just a little bit. But our applications are becoming the face of our business, and at the same time, it's becoming more challenging to know how the thing that runs those applications is doing. So I said I was going to talk about security. I'm going to talk about security. To paraphrase one of my favorite movies, security matters, princess. Anyone who says otherwise is hacking something. So it really is everyone's job. We really do need to have a sense of how we're going to secure things as we build it. That becomes a little bit more challenging also because of who's involved in standing up systems in the cloud. It's not the same people who used to stand up systems when it was on-prem or earthed, as my colleague Tom LaRock likes to say. So we need to think about it in the sense of not only making sure it's a priority, but also making sure that the people who are designing, building, and implementing these applications, which are becoming the face of our business, are aware of its importance and aware of how to get it done. And what I mean by that, I'm going to use this transitional slide to talk for a minute about something else. The point here is that almost everyone is already on the path of moving their stuff into the cloud in some way. One way or the other, you're going to get there. I want to talk about how your data, your enterprise, and your sanity remain intact while you make that transition. At the same time, I want to talk about what's different and what's changed. Like why all of a sudden do we need to start talking about things that we've been theoretically been doing for years? And that goes back to who's building it. Back in the old days, by which I mean 2019, the people putting together, implementing the systems were somewhat siloed, but they had, and silos are bad, but subject matter expertise is good. So the folks who were in charge of putting together the network connections were network engineers. They understood both the history and also the modernity of how networks work and how to keep them secure. The same thing with storage, the same thing with server and operating system and so on. Those are all true. However, nowadays, the people who are most often in charge of putting together that app, which is the face of your business, is the app developer themselves, who are generally good at programming and coding and building applications, but generally don't understand those underpinnings. And by way of analogy for that, I was helping a friend of mine who is a programmer and absolutely says, I don't do hardware. I was helping him set up his home network, and I was talking about subnetting. And he actually looked at me and said, is that still a thing? Like, dude, yes, subnetting is still a thing. What are you talking about? So, folks who are building the apps don't always understand how things go. I actually talked to one of our engineers recently who wanted to know why security was having a problem with opening up all the ports over 1024, because he needed it because that's what WMI requires, is every port over 1024. So what's the problem? And where do I start talking about why that's a problem from a security standpoint? My point in all of this is that the people who are putting together your cloud apps need to be in touch with the people who are subject matter experts in that area. It's not enough to go into the Azure, marketplace and click, and then pick a subnet and then pick a whatever and it just does it for me. And it should be perfect. No, it shouldn't. Okay, the recipes that you get in Azure are just as valid as my grandmother considered the recipe, and I choke on saying that, on the back of the Lipton soup box. She didn't say that was a recipe. That was a vague suggestion, maybe. So that's the way that you have to remember some of the things that are happening in cloud are all about. Okay, so establishing fundamental controls. I will say it, and it is crass, but I'm going to say it anyway. Lift and shift is lift and shift. No, that is not how we do stuff. You don't take your applications and just throw them skyward. What you want to do is monitor and move. That means knowing how something is performing on-prem in the NOC, and then understanding what that's going to look like when you redesign, rebuild, or tweak it to go up into the cloud. You want to make sure there's security from the start. Nobody ever said leaving this in an unsecured S3 bucket is fine, just fine. No, nobody ever said that that was a good idea, but it happens anyway. It keeps happening. If you aren't actively considering security, you are going to fail at it. So, and why do we keep reading about it? Again, because the people typically building these applications are the developers, not necessarily the people who've been in charge or aware of security issues up until now. So that's the point I want to make here. Meanwhile, next step on this 4-step migration, if you don't know how an application is working now on-prem where the cost is fixed, you are in for a huge surprise later. You need to, as I said earlier, monitor your systems now. You need to understand their usage patterns, where the data flows, how the processing spikes or doesn't spike at different times of the day or month or year based on user patterns, because controlling cost on Earth in the NOC is not the same as controlling cost in the cloud. See, on-prem, your costs are related to hardware, power, cooling, and licensing. How much does it cost to buy the stuff, whether it's hardware or licensing? How much does it cost to run the stuff? And how much does it cost to keep it cool? That's your cost on Earth. None of those things are actually a cost, well, okay, maybe licensing slightly, are a cost in the cloud. It takes all those things away. In cloud, your costs are compute, storage, and the service itself. And what that means is that you need a different kind of person involved in your cloud implementations. And I am taking the term from Corey Quinn, who is on Twitter as Quinny Pig. He calls it the cloud economist. That is somebody who has a firm grasp of technology, understands how the cloud tech goes together, but also has a head for numbers and math and finance, and understands that if you're going to put this on this tier of service based on the way the application works, we're going to lose our shirt because of all the money we spend in storage or whatever it is. So you need somebody involved who understands that. At the same time, you remember that 23% companies who aren't monitoring anymore? That makes me cry. If you trust a vendor to tell you about the stability of their systems, you have chosen poorly. That is not how you do it. At the same time, access to the guts of the cloud, like how the hardware is really working, is really difficult to get at, specifically because that's how cloud was designed. That's how it's supposed to work. Nevertheless, a mature, robust monitoring system that mature, robust monitoring solutions are adapting themselves to monitor both on-prem and cloud at the same time. Because even in the cloud, some of the old ways that we do things work, and the new ways that things work are being added into solutions now. They're there now. They allow you to have an independent, customer-centric point of view for your monitoring data. Not the vendor tells me it's all okay, but rather I have verified that it is all okay. And after all, when we talk about techniques, JSON is just a hipster version of XML, so how hard can it be? The point is that you want a monitoring solution that gets at data streams and present that in a way that turns data into information, which you can then turn into action to get things done. Let's see, moving on. If you've been in IT for more than 15 minutes, again, you probably know this conversation, build versus buy, right? Which one am I supposed to do? Do I go for an all-in-one versus an integrated point-by-point, best-of-breed, trying to shim it together? And I cannot and I will not tell you which way to go. However, what I will give you advice is that the decision does not lie in what seems easiest or most cost-effective to the management team. That is not your deciding point. The decision really hinges on the question of what will enable my staff to get their job done. That's the best solution. Because most times the staff's job is not stare at the screen and make sure the cloud doesn't turn red. The days of having eyeballs staring at screens waiting for some blinky to turn a different color are over. They actually never existed. But they're over if they ever did exist. So you have to ask yourself which solution allows your staff to know what's wrong and what isn't, and what's going well and when it stops going well, and help them focus on their actual work in between. They know that they're going to know because the system's going to tell them, and otherwise they can go back to doing the good stuff. All right, so hopefully I've shed some light on both the issues and the approaches to those issues. If not, I hope, again, that I've at least irritated you enough that you'll want to go investigate it yourself. So where am I going with this? Well, got to pay some bills, some shameless self-promotion. What we're saying here with SolarWinds is that if you have it, we can monitor it. That goes from the on-premises Windows NT server that you have sitting under a desk that no one wants to admit is there, but we all know is there, all the way up to your cloud environments, and it includes the internet-connected coffee pot. If it has an IP address, we can monitor it, and for a lot of stuff that doesn't even have an IP address, we can still monitor it. And not only that, but all the data fits together, because ultimately monitoring has two goals. It needs to give you the confidence that everything is running the way that you expect, and that if it's not, you're going to hear about it. We call that making your weekends longer, because you don't have to continually run away to go check something and worry about unnecessary interruptions. So it helps you understand the cloud level stuff like compute and how it affects the business level stuff like sales. Meanwhile, this slide, which is a little small, I understand that. What does it say? We have a lot of solutions to do a lot of things to fix a lot of the problems that you're probably dealing with. That's really what it's all about. If your IT environment is perfect and perfectly stable, then you don't need us. I'd also like to know what color the sky is on your planet, because I've yet to meet somebody whose IT environment is perfect and perfectly stable. Okay, you can also visit SolarWinds for more information. That's SolarWinds.com. You can also reach out to our 150,000 user active community called Slack. Yes, THWATK.com. That is our environment where we talk about, yes, we talk about SolarWinds stuff and monitoring stuff, but we also talk about things like, hey, I haven't written an ACL in a few months, can someone help me? And we also discuss who the greatest starship captain of all time is. It's now, by the way, just getting that out there. So please check us out and see what we have to offer. We also have about 3 dozen free as in beer, not puppies, tools that you can use just to try stuff out. All right, I appreciate your time today. I am ready for the questions I'm sure you have.
Excellent presentation, as always, Leon. Really fun, really energetic. Made me laugh more than once, so thank you for that. We do have some questions for you from the audience. While we do that, I'm just going to bring up this poll that says, what additional information would you like about SolarWinds? And I'll leave that up. I encourage everyone to respond to that. Lots of questions have come in, Leon. I've put them there in the folder for you. First one I'm going to go to here, they're asking is, what are the most useful certifications to pursue for someone who wants to get into cloud?
That's a really great question, and we get that a fair bit as we talk about cloud things. And I'm going to give you the surprising answer. I don't care. It's really, cloud is, first of all, so new, and second of all, continuing to shift so much that a certification isn't necessarily a proof of expertise in everything, because, if I look back over the last 12 months and look at how Azure has changed their strategy and their structure, how AWS comes out with a new product with a bizarre name almost every month, getting a certification in it isn't going to really prove anything out. What you want to do is you want to be able to demonstrate the fundamental skills in terms of being able to, create, manage, and verify environments that are running in the cloud. Do you have a grip on what the compute is doing? Do you have a strong sense of how much storage is needed? Do you understand which tiers are, do what and what their best use cases are? That's really what's going to matter for a business that's looking to move into cloud. beyond just understanding technology. I mean, the fundamentals are still the fundamentals, and I was talking about that earlier. You do still need to know about subnetting. You still do need to know about storage. You still need to know about how databases operate and query plans and how to optimize both your database performance and also your application and query performance. Those things all matter. Knowing how to do that in a cloud environment is just knowing how to do the same thing in a different interface.
Excellent. That's very well said. Very well said. Next question here, and thank you everyone for the great questions. Where do you get those stats on training, budgeting, top monitoring tools that you showed in the presentation, Leon?
So SolarWinds puts out a survey every year. It's called the IT Trends Report, and if you go to it-trends.com, a lot of those stats are there. So, and we ask a variety of different questions year over year in terms of people's cloud migration plans and their status. So that's where we get a lot of it from, along with some of the sort of industry standard sources that, if you Google once or twice, you're going to find.
Got it. Excellent. And then next question, they say, I just got clobbered with an Azure bill for 1 month. I wasn't expecting. You mentioned cloud costs. How do I monitor for that? Does SolarWinds have a solution around that?
Why, yes, we do. Thank you for the win. Wow, I couldn't have set that up better myself. Yeah, so that happens to lots of people. I won't say it happens to everybody, but it does happen a lot where you put things up there and you don't realize that just putting something in storage is going to have a cost, or you don't realize that having a database, even if it's not running, is going to have a cost, or whatever it is. So actually one of my coworkers put together a demo system and didn't realize it until the next month when his credit card showed a bill for, I am not making this number up, $6,374. Oops. Yeah, that's not funny. As much as I chuckle about it because it didn't happen to me, it's not good. So we actually have a free tool, once again, free as in beer, not free as in puppies. It's the Azure Cost Calculator, and all you do is put in your Azure login, and it will collect the metrics of everything. And the best part about it is that you get it on a minute-by-minute basis. You can tell how much things are costing you on an ongoing basis rather than waiting for the bill at the end of the month. So that's one way to do it. And really what that is a proof of concept. It's not that I say, you should run your whole entire enterprise on, this free tool. What we're doing is showing you it can be done. Those stats are available. So your monitoring solution should be able to get that for you too. And if it can't, I would politely suggest that you look for a more mature, robust, feature-rich monitoring solution that can do things like that for you.
Excellent. And then there is a question here from Alex who's asking, how can I access SolarWinds demos? I believe you all have a real nice online system for that.
We do. Demo.solarwinds.com is an online demo. It's available to everybody all the time, and it shows off all of our products in one environment that you can kick the tires on. Now, there's certain things you can't do, like you can't shut down my router, sorry, not sorry, but you can poke around, and we've got examples of Exchange and Cloud and on-premises all together where you can poke around and see this is what the data would look like, this is what reports look like, this is what alerts look like, and so on and so forth. So you can really do that. Also, I'm going to say all with quotes around it because my legal team gets really concerned when I say all and free. Those are words that make them crazy. So with quotes around it, I'll say all of our products have a 30-day unlimited demo, which means you can download it, install it on your hardware, and then run it on against as many things as you want. You can monitor as many servers or as many storage arrays or as many whatevers for 30 days and see how it works for nothing, for free. After that, you got to pay for a license and so on, but it's a great way to look at things in your environment as well. I also want to point out that you can install things straight from the Amazon Marketplace and the Azure Store. SolarWinds products are also available there in a trial version.
Excellent. Well, Leon, fantastic presentation again. I'm afraid that's all the time we have in our live Q&A. I put 24 questions for you there in the queue if you have time to check those out and respond to those. Of course, we always appreciate it. Great presentation again. Thank you so much for being on.
No problem. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
You too. And thank you to everyone out there in the audience for all the excellent questions. We do appreciate those. Keep those coming. But now it's time to move on to our next presentation. I'm excited to introduce Derek Seiler, Solutions Architect at Flexential. Derek, thanks for being on.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate it. And can you hear me okay? Is my audio coming through fine?
Loud and clear. Yep, take it away.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you very much. Well, first of all, thank you to everyone on the call. My name is Derek Seiler. I'm a solution architect at Flexential, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about, connecting cloud environments, specifically connecting from the core to the edge, and define that a little bit and leave you with some questions to ask as you're thinking about your cloud managed service providers and colocation providers and who can help to future-proof your IT investment for some of these emerging trends that are coming down the pike. They're going to define how application environments are architected and the underlying infrastructure that supports those application environments is configured and interconnected. So let's start first by talking about, what are some of the key drivers, the disruptive technology trends that are shaping this new digital landscape as enterprise IT planners are looking to, plan their application environments over the next 5 to 10 years and beyond. Obviously, some of the major trends that everybody hears about is 5G and IoT. 5G is going to revolutionize the last mile and provide that very low latency, interconnectivity and really power up edge solutions, where IoT is going to, rapidly expand the ability for folks to develop, very feature-rich application environments much closer to the edge from a data processing perspective. The race to artificial intelligence, that has certain applications in terms of how application environments are architected and underpinning infrastructure that supports those application environments are configured, because very low latency requirements come into play when you're talking about AI and ML. And there's, just about all of the application environments in social and other emerging categories are going to be powered by AI and ML and are heavily leveraging those technologies today. The hyperscalers, which everybody spoke of 5 years ago and 10 years ago as the kind of cloud consolidated around a few hyperscale providers, are going to continue to work on network densification. And I'll talk a little bit about some of the application environments that make sense for hyperscale and some that don't, when you're thinking about where do you architect your cloud environment and where should your applications go as you move in that transition from on-premise to co-location to cloud. And that's what Flexential can really help you do. Flexential can really help you future-proof your infrastructure investment, your IT investment over time. We work with clients to provide hybrid IT solutions that help them really let the workload be the guide, right? Software-defined everything is something that is very prevalent, whether that's SD-WAN, software-defined networking, whether that's software-defined hyper-diverse infrastructure. You're really letting the workload be the guide, and customers are looking to future-proof their IT investment. So unless you've had the benefit of building out your entire IT estate in a hyperscale configuration, you're traditionally dealing with some sort of legacy infrastructure requirements, and how do you then navigate this towards the cloud? Putting the right workloads in the right infrastructure platforms at the right time, right? It may make sense to move some of those workloads to a hyperscale. It may make sense to lift and shift some of those into a co-location. It may make sense to bring some of those into a private cloud configuration, and you really need a cloud managed service provider that can act as a trusted advisor and help you wayfind your way through that journey and choose the right destination based upon the application performance requirements of that workload, and that's what we do at Flexential. So let's talk a little bit about architecting a core-to-edge solution. Starting first on the core, right? So when you're talking about the core, you're really talking about your traditional enterprise application environments, and you're talking about hybrid IT, right? Nobody has the benefit of being, completely born in the cloud. There are, a few exceptions, right? Netflix works very well in AWS because Netflix was purpose-built to work in AWS, right? But if you're the 75% of enterprise environments out there that don't have the benefit of all of their infrastructure being, born in the cloud, or their applications being born in the cloud, How do you overcome some of these challenges in hybrid IT, and what are those, right? It's moving from an on-premise consumption of IT to an off-premise co-location consumption to ultimately a cloud consumption, controlling costs as you do. Right, you only want to pay for the IT resources that you're using when you use it, right? Shift from a CapEx into an OpEx. You don't want to be over-provisioning the capital expense for infrastructure that you don't need, and you want to be tying that expense capitalization or OpEx expenditures to the revenue-generating component of that application environment. And then you want the flexibility to be able to grow over time, right? You don't want to be landlocked or kind of locked in to a particular technology platform. You want to make sure your cloud managed service provider really takes a technology agnostic approach and a trusted advisor approach to help you, navigate in terms of having that sort of flexibility to shift as your application environment requirements change over time. And it's all about choosing the right mix for the right application environment for the right workload. We've noticed here at Flexential the boomerang effect, and you've probably heard this term before, but something like 1/3 or more of companies have begun to pull back some of those workloads that they rushed to move up into hyperscale clouds 3, 4, 5 years ago, as they realized that the cost containment that they were hoping to realize by moving from an on-premise deployment of that infrastructure into a hyperscale deployment of it didn't get realized, right? And the primary driver or reason behind that was it wasn't specifically architected, built to work in that type of hyperscale environment. It was a legacy architected application environment, and they noticed ingress and egress fees as they moved it up into a hyperscale and now needed to pull it back, most likely into a private cloud deployment. But there's other use cases behind it that are driving, the right mix for the right workload, things like multi-cloud, using multiple cloud platforms for deployment, hybrid cloud, a mix of legacy non-virtualized infrastructure plus virtualized infrastructure, or just simple lift and shift if they're not ready to replatform that application environment at this time. When it comes to hosted private cloud, there's specific challenges that a cloud managed service provider like Flexential can solve for you. Most of those are, once you understand that a hosted private cloud configuration is the right deployment for that application environment, you're likely doing that around a couple of key business drivers, one being security and compliance. You might have things governing that application environment like HIPAA or PCI DSS, right? If it's a storefront or e-commerce environment or something that's collecting, personal health information or personal identifiable information. Or you may be an enterprise environment where you're just understanding that building and maintaining your own cloud environment is complex, right? Just because you move that workload over to a hyperscale doesn't decomplexify managing that cloud environment on the long term. And then you want to make sure you're using the right applications, with the right cloud solution, and that you future-proofed your investment. So here's the thing: when you're thinking about your application workloads, not all workloads work well in a hyperscale environment. If it is something like dev test or something that needs, infinite burstability, something that's designed for rapid build up and tear down, or maybe it has lower data egress requirements, that might be perfect. Your orchestrated containers, right? Your Dockers and so forth, your DevOps and your application development teams, sandboxing and so forth. That's perfect for a hyperscale environment. Right, but if it's something that's a little bit more legacy, right, it's your CRM or ERP platform, it's an N-tier architecture, lifting and shifting, replatforming that into a hyperscale environment may not work well in terms of your estimates of costs that you're going to receive, let alone the performance of what that hyperscale environment may provide. And here's a specific example, and I'll just go ahead and bring the builds out here. So usually as we're having this conversation around the core cloud applications with customers, we find at Flexential, being the advisor to the customer in what platform makes the right sense for that workload, we're oftentimes competing with a simple price calculator when we're having this conversation around AWS. So they will price out their configurations, they'll pick the number of CPU and the RAM and the storage that they need, they'll pick out their virtual machines and their VPCs, their AMIs, and they'll say, okay, this is going to cost me X amount per month, and they'll come in with that sort of budgetary expectation. But if it's architected in a traditional N tier where you have a web and app tier isolated in a separate security subnet from, say, your SQL database, which is a very common architecture for application environments. What you could find with just something as simple as 1 month's worth of 1 gigabyte VPC peering, your actual costs in that environment, as you would realize, it would be something like 5x or 10x more than what you're anticipating. So it's taking this role with our customers, this trusted advisor role, to help them understand what are their true costs, what are the true hidden costs above and beyond the infrastructure as you're paying for that ingress and egress, right? That data traffic between those security subnets, to help them understand, if you're going to let the workload be the guide, maybe hyperscale isn't the right deployment for that environment. So let's switch a little bit to edge. That was core. Let's talk a little bit more about the edge. And it first starts really kind of with defining what the edge is. And the edge is broken down between kind of the core edge, the near edge, and the far edge. And the far edge is, ultra low latency, kind of that wired and wireless, that last mile. That's where you're doing a lot of local data analytics, data collections. If you hear things like stranded data lakes, that's where that data is accumulating. Near edge is more of your micro data centers, and then core is more of the use cases that we were speaking of before, which is your hyperscale cloud data centers, your telco data centers, cloud managed service providers like Flexential. And what are some of the business drivers behind deployment at the edge? Well, it's IoT, it's AI, it's ML, right? The actual verticals where this technology or this requirement for edge computing is being deployed towards are pretty limitless, right? But it's things around autonomous vehicles, wearables, CCTV. It's creating very heavy data that has a lot of data warehousing requirements. It's requiring processing closer and closer to the edge. And you can see, just some of the verticals that is commonly used in agriculture, broadcasting, video surveillance, and so forth. And here's just a couple more detail on some of the actual use cases that edge is being deployed in. Smart cities, right? Prior to the COVID pandemic, Americans would spend something like 5 billion hours per year commuting, right? To and from centralized office environments. How can smart cities and edge technologies be deployed to better optimize traffic flow, right? You're seeing more and more autonomous vehicles in transport, so IoT technology is being deployed at the edge to help optimize this. You obviously have to have very low latency requirements there. If you think about the amount of time it would take for a server to transmit to an IoT device that's in an autonomous vehicle, obviously that latency is not only super critical, it's literally mission critical, life critical, right? So the ability to deploy that processing at the very edge, it comes into play. Smart health, telemedicine, distance learning, right? With the COVID pandemic, and then beyond, the ability to deliver healthcare solutions, learning solutions, and so forth at the very edge of the network, or just some of the business drivers that are powering this. So here's one that's a little bit more specific. I'll unpack for you. Great example. This is actually a customer of Flexential's, but they were looking at taking in-game betting, right? So this was, as action is unfolding in a Major League sports game, the ability to do sports books on, what is the next play going to be able to bring up that real-time analytics, to be able to take that kind of information and be able to process it real time when the action is literally changing second by second, unfolding. Well, that is a use case that's going to require a microcloud or edge type deployment. You simply can't transmit that sort of heavy, video high definition file data back and forth between some central processing. You've got to bring that processing, closer to the edge. And that was a solution where, we, because we have that, hybrid approach and that distributed data footprint, we were able to bring that processing closer to where that data is being collected and be able to build out that seamless application environment that allowed real-time gaming experience and embedding experience for this particular application. So as it all comes together, that's how Flexential delivers hybrid IT, the combination of the core and the edge, and the ability to, let that workload really be the guide in terms of what's the right infrastructure underlying that application environment. Is it something that should be hosted in a hyperscale environment? Is it better deployed in a private cloud environment? Is it something that might need to be stood up on bare metal, or is it just something that's an existing infrastructure environment that can be lifted into a co-location because they want to be out of the data center business of hosting that environment, right? So it's that ability to help unlock customers' digital transformations for these hybrid environments, whether that's at the core or at the edge, that's really at this kind of central underpinning of Flexential's value proposition to help future-proof customers' technology investments. So with that, I have a few minutes to turn it back over, and we can open up the Q&A.
Absolutely. Yeah, great presentation. Really cool what you guys are doing there at Flexential, especially around edge computing. So cool stuff. We do have a lot of good questions coming in for you. Let's see. First question here in the queue, Derek, is hosted private cloud always the right choice when analyzing a hybrid environment?
Yeah, that's a great question. It may be, it may not be. It really, there's a couple of drivers that I think need to be taken into account to understand it, right? What is the application performance environment, right? From a performance perspective, if it's very large VMs, a very heavy storage footprint, the IOPS requirements are extreme. That's something where, a dedicated, purpose-built hosted private cloud environment may be a better deployment, right? Or if it's got certain governance around it. A lot of our customers are in the healthcare vertical, for example, right? So they have to have a HIPAA-compliant cloud, right? So that's around, how is the data segmented? How is it isolated? What are the control points around accessing it, around accessing the vCenter, being able to kind of get at the kind of core of what is very sensitive and very protected data, right? Or where does that cloud need to reside, right? If you're looking at the hyperscalers, the hyperscalers have only a few availability zones, and there's no way to engineer around the speed of light, right? So you may have certain applications that have very low latency sensitivity requirements that require that cloud node to be much closer to where that user base is clustered, right? And that may be a better deployment for a hosted private cloud configuration versus a more centralized hyperscale deployment. But here's the key thing to stress, right? When you're having these conversations with cloud managed service providers, they should be a platform agnostic trusted advisor, right? We want to help customers future-proof their investment. So if that workload is really better suited to a hyperscale, we can provide them very low latency connectivity to any sort of dedicated workload that might be in a colo or hosted private cloud environment at Flexential, and they need to be able to have quick and easy access into their workloads hosted at Amazon. We can deploy that, right? So we really take a platform agnostic approach and let the workload be the guide.
Excellent. That's smart. Let's see. I want to call out the poll question that's on the screen to everyone out there. I should have mentioned that before. The question is, what additional information would you like about the Flexential solution? And I'll leave that up while we do some more questions. Again, thank you everyone for the great questions coming in. Next question for you, Derek, is they say here, with the need for quick and easy access to data at all times, it seems like that edge solution is the only way of the future for everyone. How does scalability in a cloud look for a company in a high growth phase? What's your take on that?
Well, I think from an infinite scalability perspective, hyperscale is certainly an attractive option, right? And because we take that platform agnostic approach, we would certainly look to that if the application is architected properly, for that. And we can even help deploy that for customers. So we do within our professional services practice, things around like managed DevOps, for example, if they're looking to, put a DevOps methodology around the deployment of their app dev teams and their CI and CD pipelines. And they need that infinite, burstability that a hyperscale, can provide. But if it's something that is a bit more of a legacy application, right? It's revenue facing. It has a more traditional, N-tier LAMP stack type application architecture. It might be better suited for a private cloud deployment, simply based upon the performance requirements or the security requirements or the governance requirements around it, right? So again, I hate to keep defaulting to, but I would default to, kind of letting the workload be the guide. And every platform is going to have certain, draws to it that may make sense based upon what the application performance requirements would be. How we're looking at Edge, though, is we've just announced actually a partnership with American Tower. So our 40 data centers give us a wonderful geographic coverage across the United States and across the pond as well. And our 100 gigabit fiber network, expandable up to 400 gig, can provide very low latency access to all of our data center environments. But we realize to really embrace Edge, we have to be closer and closer to where customers are, consuming and processing data, right? Especially around things like IoT. So we've announced a partnership with American Tower that takes their 40,000 cell tower locations. So now we're not talking 40 data centers, we're talking 40,000. Puts it on our core backbone so that we have multiple other points where we could put edge appliances and kind of route some processing back to a micro data center, as you saw in some of my slide presentations, and that sort of core versus near edge versus edge strategy around architecting their network. So that's how we're helping customers embrace the edge, is by rapid expansion through strategic marketing partnerships.
Excellent, excellent. And then there is a question here. I like this one. They're asking, what do I need to do to get a demo of Flexential? What do you recommend?
Absolutely. So we have a variety of demos that we can provide. We understand that in a COVID environment, a lot of times getting folks into a data center. And by the way, that's one of our key selling features. We'd love to get you into the data center. Our data centers show very well. They really are state of the art. From Uptime Institute rating perspective, these are tier 3, tier 4 rated data centers. So they really are something that we like to show off. However, we understand COVID, has sort of changed that in terms of everybody officing from home and limited travel and so forth. So we have a variety of virtual demos that we can do for our data center or our private cloud environment. We can do virtual demos of vCloud Director and how you get access and spin up a VM or VPCs, groupings of virtual machines, and sort of the ease and simplicity of that feature available through our customer portal. Same thing for our disaster recovery cloud demos, our self-managed and fully managed backup cloud demos, our desktop, virtual desktop cloud demos. So all of that is available. You just reach out to, go to flexential.com and reach out to one of our representatives, and we'd be happy to schedule those demos for you.
Awesome. Well, that's all the time we have in our live Q&A session here, I'm afraid, but a really great presentation, Derek. There are many more questions there for you still in the queue if you have time to check those out. We appreciate it. Thank you so much for being on the event today.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it, guys.
For more information on Flexential and all the other solutions on the event today, make sure you check out the Handouts tab. Specifically for Flexential, you'll find there the Actual Tech Media Gorilla Guide Express edition covering taking data to the edge. This is a full ebook that you can download and check out after the event, so don't forget to download that handout. Thank you, everyone, again, for the excellent questions, but it's time to keep this EcoCast moving on. We do have a quick prize announcement, though. Our first Amazon $500 gift card that's going to Jonathan Spike from Wisconsin. Congratulations, Jonathan Spike from Wisconsin. And now I'm excited to introduce you to our next presenter on today's EcoCast. Welcome, Mr. Matt Wallace, Chief Technology Officer at Faction. Matt, are you there?
I am. Hey, how's it going?
Going great. Thanks for being on, Matt. Take it away.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Well, thanks for having me, and hello, everybody. I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about cloud and specifically supporting cloud environments by talking about what it means to think about multi-cloud architecturally, why you would do that, and how some of the tools that we've built can help. Faction has a really unique offering in this space that's very, very focused on enterprises being able to adopt or even handle, if they've already found themselves in a situation, multiple clouds without some of the sort of difficulties that normally they wrestle with there. So with that having been said, I actually had my first experience with Amazon all the way back in 2007. And at the time, if you were an AWS user, there were no EBS volumes, no persistent storage, which means like even booting a VM had to be done from a base image, an AMI that was sitting in S3, and you retrieve all data out of S3. So it's interesting architecturally to deal with the sort of lack of persistence at the time. But I've been all around the data center space. Actually, it's weird kind of following up from Flexential since I ran product development for a while at ViOS before they merged. And small world. So Faction, we've been around for over 14 years, and I'd say probably the last 3 to 4, we've been very focused on this multi-cloud and hybrid cloud problem space. We have a ton of private cloud environments. We operate around the world for customers, thousands of hosts. We have hundreds of petabytes of data under management, a host of patents that are really related to networking and multi-cloud networking, and about all these sort of partner accolades, both on the VMware side of things as well as, with the public clouds, like being an Amazon Advanced Consulting partner. Pretty unusual sort of evolution for a company that was very deep in the VMware space and still is, but looking to evolve. So I think before we talk about multi-cloud, we have to ask the question of why cloud in the first place, right? And I think there's a lot of reasons why people adopt cloud, and it may be geographic diversity. It may be, you want to avoid CapEx. It might be to burst to the cloud and use it for sort of burst workloads that are sort of seasonal, and that was actually what caused me to look at it in 2007. But there's one thing that's a constant, which is you're going to get innovation out of the cloud. AWS, Azure, GCP, they are all employing some of the best and the brightest, trying to evolve that space as quickly as you can. Of course, super fun to have this conversation in the middle of reInvent. I don't know what everybody else's sort of like most jaw-dropping announcement was, but when I saw the Babelfish announcement for this inline translation into Postgres on the wire, basically that AWS announced, I was amazed how powerful that is. So the funny thing, of course, though, is that these guys all began doing a very lowest common denominator thing, right? In other words, everybody had the same instances. They all had block storage, file storage. They adapted high memory instances, high CPU instances, and so on. But as time has gone on, public cloud is evolving towards this era where things are much more up the stack. If you look at the huge array of services, around the SageMaker platform on AWS, there's not really an equivalent. Like, there are other things to try to address AI and machine learning. But if you are deep on SageMaker and you've got a bunch of code written for it and use cases that are using it and so on, it's not going to be easy necessarily to swing something like that over. Likewise, you look at something like image recognition, Amazon Rekognition and with a K, and Azure Computer Vision are both things that can tell you, oh, that's a boat. But one of them might tell you it's a schooner, and the other one might tell you it's a yacht, depending on how they were trained on their model. One of them might be better at sentiment analysis, saying, oh, this person's unhappy, they don't like your store display, right? Those sorts of things are leading the developers to use the cloud that makes the most sense for them. And plenty of organizations end up in multiple clouds, but multiple clouds is not multi-cloud unless you have a strategy around it. And being able to pick and choose services, get innovation faster is one of the big reasons. And I'll touch on another one later, which is more around scale and consistency. So let's talk a little bit about data management and distributed cloud era. And if this seems like a noisy slide, that's intentional because it's a bit of a mess. The reality is, what used to primarily live in the data center, and I've been doing this since Exodus spawned the first things we called internet data centers back in the late 90s, kind of rolled around the globe pulling in these workloads. Super great way to have a, high reliability experience, very high, well-connected network. That pattern hasn't changed for 2 decades, but that centralizing of those applications in data centers, whether they were co-location facilities like that or your own enterprise data centers, it's really changed. And part of that is because many workloads have gone to the cloud. It's been sort of unavoidable, even though most enterprises are hybrid. And of course, now there's edge to consider, right? There's obviously already some use cases there, but it's growing, right? Yes, your fridge is talking back to a centralized server, and yes, I have an app that will turn on and off my dryer. But this goes a lot further than that in the future here as you start imagining things like drones flying through the air because you're going to use an app to rent a power drill for 20 minutes, right? And I think those applications are going to continue to grow over the next 10, 20 years and will amaze us all. And then, of course, the COVID factor, right? Tons of remote workers. That whole workforce has grown extraordinarily. And while I expect that there'll be some pulling back on that, I think we don't go back to the way that things were. And so here we are with a lot more distributed information and interaction. So how do you deal with those things when you're trying to modernize the things that you have now, but also deal with all these data management challenges, right? So to win the war on data gravity, the first thing we wanted to tackle was this idea of giving you an easy way to deal with multi-cloud. And so what we've built is this multi-cloud fabric. And I'm drawing upon a recent presentation we did at BioIT World, where we worked with some leaders in the life sciences space doing multi-cloud genomic analysis. So we used the 1,000 Genomes Project data. We loaded it up into Faction's multi-cloud services, and then we turned up hundreds and hundreds of GPUs across each cloud. Different GPUs because they actually don't have the same GPUs. If you go to Northern Virginia, Google, Azure, Amazon, all different GPUs for different purposes. Interesting stuff there. We were able to turn up over 1 million CUDA cores. And, genomic analysis is an amazing space right now, right? The first human genome was sequenced in 2004. It took literally years of work by many people to do just one. And now there are machines that are made that can literally spit out many of them in a day. And so we're literally at the point now of sequencing, looking to sequence thousands or tens of thousands of genomes a year. It's gone commercial through things like 23andMe and so on. And there's a whole lot of work that gets done here. Using a GPU actually cuts the time on these things by over 90% because they can do really specialized things in code. What's fascinating, though, of course, is to do that cost effectively, especially when your workload is extremely variable, which many of the genomic workloads are because they're tied to, okay, we've got this data from the study, now we want to go and do analysis on the participants, things of that nature. So if you want to do that sort of thing, you want to be able to kind of adjust your resourcing levels across multiple clouds, right? And what's the way to do that? You can't set up VPNs between clouds to move data. You can't actually be taking data and moving it between clouds or moving it from on-prem to the clouds with things like file gateways and so on. No matter how good they tell you the WAN optimization is, you just can't beat the speed of light. Data gravity will win in the end. What we've done is we have managed to build a platform that sits as close as you can possibly get to each cloud provider's environment. And you can see here, this is us actually doing ping tests from each cloud provider, Azure, Amazon, Google, on the left, into Faction's storage platform that operates this multi-cloud storage. And so while we're delivering, in this case here, this is just our lab environment, we're doing almost 20 gigabytes per second of throughput coming out of this environment with millisecond-ish latencies from each cloud simultaneously. And keep in mind, each of these instances across this cluster has the storage centrally mounted. So you could have hundreds of instances in Amazon and hundreds more in Azure, hundreds more in Google, and have the same NFS mounts or CIFS shares or be leveraging HDFS or object because our platform is multi-protocol. Use that from the middle. So pretty powerful. And the thing is, we know that your use cases change. Part of the point we were making here is, hey, you're going to adapt to innovation across the clouds. Well, you're going to want to be able to change the bandwidth you have tied to each cloud. So our platform supports, this ability to go in and modify the configuration of your cloud control volumes, which is the name we use for this centralized storage product, and actually change the way it connects to each cloud on the fly. So if you imagine this, you can literally go to each CSP, turn up instances, mount the exact same storage. And if you're writing to it from one cloud, you immediately see the effect of the other cloud. It's not replication. And I've had to actually tell people that sometimes on calls like 5 times in a row as they go, wait, so there's no replication. No, we're actually wiring the same storage into multiple clouds at the same time. And so it's a little bit like, an EBS volume or an EFS volume, but when you write to it, you can immediately see the data that you've written across all of the cloud environments. And of course, we can connect it to multiple VPCs, multiple VNets, et cetera. So if you have, a bit of an estate, if you will, with multiple accounts, there's options to kind of increasingly to add complexity to your network and still access all of this across multiple clouds. So the ability here to adjust is pretty powerful, right? You can see here the sort of wizard for attaching, creating a new cloud connection. And I mean, we actually can scale this architecture where it can go as high as 800 gigabits to a single VNet in a single cloud. That's 400 for Amazon, but 800 for Google and Azure. The Azure side of it is completely egress-free. So you might be thinking, okay, well, that sounds interesting, but I'm not sure that I need multi-cloud. Is it worth it? Well, one of the funny things about this is if you look at these large footprints, and the customers that we are talking to that we make the most sense for are those that have larger footprints. Probably anything 100 terabyte plus, it starts to be worth looking at. But as it goes into the several hundreds of terabytes and into the petabytes, I'd say probably 2 petabytes is our average customer starting footprint for this, but it certainly goes lower. There's a huge amount of cost savings to be had. You can see we are actually less expensive for comparable services than each individual cloud, which makes us an order of magnitude more cost effective when you look at all the clouds combined, right? This is the idea of if you're going to store one copy of your, say, genomic data in Azure and AWS and Google, so you could scale your workload across all 3 clouds, literally it's going to cost you 10 times as many dollars. So it's pretty amazing actually how we're able to deliver this savings. One of the interesting things about this is, if you are looking to scale a workload across multiple clouds, you have a scenario where pricing on things like spot instance can fluctuate wildly. I included this graph here so you could kind of see this ability to move your workload to whichever cloud makes economic sense is very powerful, but it goes beyond just cost because even availability matters, right? In our Project Triumph work, we over and over again encountered fluctuations that caused our capacity to basically drop to zero, as you can see here, right? Cases where, we had sometimes 75 plus instances, each of which had 4 GPUs in some of these clouds. And then what we would see happen is they would all be kind of reclaimed, decommissioned suddenly, and, we wouldn't even be able to get on-demand instances, let alone spot instances. So the powerful thing about this and the transformation enables, right, also is it's also something that we have partnered up with Dell to deliver on Dell's platforms as well. So they have full compatibility with Dell hardware that runs on-prem. So if you have Dell Unity, PowerStore, PowerMax, PowerScale, ECS, all these platforms, we actually support different flavors of our Cloud Control Volume products so you can replicate data directly to Faction, and then we can take the replicated copy and present it to multiple clouds. So we solve the data gravity problem for the data you have on-prem by allowing you to replicate it into our product, which then connects to multiple clouds. And we have a set of services that kind of layer on top of that to add some value. And as you can see with things like Isilon, where it's multi-protocol, very powerful here when you think about digital transformation, because if you replicate your on-prem Isilon or PowerScale into the Faction platform, and then we present it to the cloud, you're able to use the same workflow used on-prem using NFS, CIFS, HDFS, et cetera. But if you have teams that are starting to kind of modernize your applications and they want to use something like object storage, then they are actually able to connect into the same platform using object storage. And so you can actually have the same data with both your sort of traditional protocol you're already using and new applications being written with a new protocol. So you actually satisfy kind of both developer personas here, right? You have teams that want to do things differently, then you don't have to make extra copies and pay extra dollars to deal with that. So whole set of powerful things that kind of help you address cloud transformation to cloud and this whole multi-cloud problem. And so I know it's pretty fast. There's a lot of fun stuff to cover. So with that, open for questions.
Great presentation, Matt, as always. Really, really insightful stuff. We do have some questions for you from the audience. While we do that, I'm just going to bring up this poll. for everyone out there that says, what additional information would you like about the faction solution? And we'll leave that up while we take some Q&A. So let's see. Lots of good questions coming in. I've been sorting those here into the folder for you, Matt. First one I see on the list is what other use cases are customers using Faction for other than genomics that you mentioned?
Oh yeah, good question. Yeah, it's interesting too. As soon as we had the results from this project, we did actually engage with like a half a dozen life sciences companies because it was pretty revolutionary. I would say broadly speaking, we are engaged with anybody who has a very large data set, right? And especially kind of looking to leverage cloud with that data. So I would say, for example, number one, petrotechnical. We have several customers out of the oil and gas space. So like one that I know more intimately, they have many petabytes of sonar scan data, right? They scan with sonar the seabed floor. And we're actually replicating to and from their premises. So they have a main data center where they run the workloads. We are actually tying them into a DR environment using this replication technology so they can do a DR to the cloud, specifically in VMware Cloud on AWS, which we are sort of experts in as well. But additionally to that, they can take that same data, since it's now been replicated for that DR, and actually make it available to the other cloud environments, both Amazon native, the other clouds, so that they can do more kind of AI and machine learning workloads, which is obviously what they're doing even on premises, but the ability to scale, leverage cloud SaaS services for that, kind of experiment with new ways to get more value out of that data is a pretty big deal. There's a bunch of other things too here, just healthcare in general, things like patient record systems. We're engaged with some of the folks doing self-driving car work because, of course, the amount of compute it requires to train a model to drive a car is astronomical, and the amount of data is also in the tens of petabytes plus at a bare minimum, definitely scaling into the hundreds of petabytes. So folks like that who kind of want to take advantage of different sorts of attributes across multiple cloud providers with large data sets is definitely the sweet spot. Although we also have a bunch of people who very simply, for example, they have a large NAS environments on-prem, and they can't handle the limitations that they see in throughput or scale in the cloud. The fact that we can present a volume that's literally 10 petabytes of file storage that a single instance and hundreds of instances can access simultaneously solves a lot of problems for people.
Very nice. Some cool use cases there. All right, let's see. Next question. They're asking how many customers are actually using this for multi-cloud rather than just single cloud right now? Yeah,
it's pretty important to keep in mind, what I was saying too about the advantage of, versus the cost side of things, multi-cloud versus single cloud, because we have, I would say, more than half of all the customers on the platform really are just using it as a single cloud. But when you start thinking about the attributes of file services, right, if you want to build a data lake that, number one, supports multiple protocols, NFS, CIFS, HDFS object, you want it to be able to scale into petabytes. You want to be able to have it go very high throughput, right? We're talking about 90 gigabytes per second of throughput we can deliver across clouds. When you start looking at all of these attributes and being able to use that especially across clouds, we're kind of absolutely the only solution for that. But I think even within clouds, if you start comparing it to things like, an Azure File Premium, where it can't go higher than 100 terabytes, it can't scale faster than it's about 10 gigabytes per second of throughput. All those kind of limits basically put a kibosh on certain types of architectures. So I think we're a little bit more future-proof there because we're really focused on this giant data set use case.
Got it. Okay. Let's see. There's a number of questions here around multi-cloud. For example, they're asking what proof do we have that multi-cloud is a better solution for us, as well as what about cost savings around multi-cloud? Any suggestions there?
Yeah, so one of the reasons we did this work around the genomic analysis, obviously I have a slide where you can see just as a terabyte for terabyte, for this use case around, performant file storage, we're going to save you at least 50%, a little more than 50%, even in one cloud, and over 90% across three clouds if you needed 3 copies. But there's other interesting things too. We have a white paper that's coming out soon, published by a third party doing kind of independent research against the platform where they looked at some scenarios that we were able to show them where, for example, by moving into our platform and being able to do this cloud bursting for variable workloads, we can show savings that are north of 85% versus just buying additional hardware on-prem by taking advantage of that availability of spot instances. And of course, we're able to deliver a much better experience as you go to use spot instances in the cloud, specifically because you're not tied to one cloud provider's inventory, one cloud provider's price, one cloud provider's capability, right? And one thing we certainly see at reInvent this week and at other times is you never know. I mean, one of the providers is going to be launching some new instance type like practically every month, right? And it'll be, new chips to do inference, new chips to do training, new chips to do, analytics of some kind, new GPUs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And all those things, cause your developers, your teams, your applications to go, oh, we could save a lot of money on that. And we make that switching easy regardless of which cloud provider kind of comes up with a given innovation at any given time.
Interesting. Okay. And this question I find good as well. They're asking, do we need to worry about what type of data we have? Like when we put it into the cloud, is one cloud better for this type of data and that cloud is better for that type of data?
The answer is probably yes. We're not necessarily going to tell you what it is for your use case, although obviously as we kind of get, more experience working with customers, we're certainly encountering certain things, right? Like when we get into this genomics on spot instances, I could talk to you probably at length about, the cost savings and the fact that two of the cloud providers have much lower or much higher discounts on spot instances than the third one does. And so if you want to do that, it's a big deal. I also noticed somebody said, can you download a demo version? Let me just say too, please reach out to us through the website. We do actually have a demo version. This product actually gets sold also by Dell directly as the Dell Technologies Cloud Storage for Multi-Cloud product. We actually built a full hands-on lab environment with them so you can actually log into live instances in Amazon Azure, mount storage, see the multi-cloud effect, interact with the portal, et cetera, the whole 9 yards. So yeah, reach out to us on the website and you can take it for a little test drive.
Very cool. I like that. Let's see, a couple other questions here I want to see if we have time to cover. One is this person, their EMC storage is coming up for renewal or upgrade. Does Faction have a solution that might help in that case, or does it just depend where the applications are running that access that storage?
Sure. Well, we're working really closely with Dell, and you can actually get this whole product line directly from Dell. So I'd say certainly work with the Dell team. We have seen scenarios where people have migrated certain portions of their on-prem storage into this service. We've seen people actually add storage on-prem and then also match that storage in the multi-cloud environment as well. So there's a whole lot of sort of choices around that. And obviously it depends on your situation and what you're doing from a digital transformation perspective. What we find is a common thread is that people do want to take more advantage of cloud. Data gravity creates a real problem, either moving it between clouds or moving it between on-prem and clouds. And that sort of data movement is something that our solution just inherently solves using the Dell platform. So absolutely, please reach out, and we can engage with you as well as with the Dell team that you work with.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you so much, Matt, for taking a little bit of extra time there to handle many of these questions that have come in. Obviously, it's a very exciting solution. The audience is excited about it. Thank you for being on the event today.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you to Faction for supporting today's event. Check out the link that's there in your handouts tab for more information. That'll take you to factioninc.com, and it's there. You can view an overview video and sign up for your own personal demo of the Faction solution. All right, thank you everyone who responded to the poll question there. We do appreciate that. It's time now for our next presenter on today's Cloud EcoCast. I'm excited to introduce Mr. Tim Honker, Lead Sales Engineer at Rapid7. Tim, thanks for being on.
Hi, thanks everyone for joining me. My name is Tim Honker. I'm a Lead Security Engineer here at Rapid7. Been with the company for about 5 years. And so today I'm going to be talking about security in the cloud space along with multi-cloud space. So like I said, I've been with Rapid7 for about 5 years, and I spend my days on the phone helping people solve cybersecurity issues, architect new solutions, build out custom programs, especially around cloud posture security, vulnerability management, application security, and automation. I come from a background as a developer, and I used to write a whole lot of development automation stuff 10 to 20 years ago. So like I said, I spend my days on the phone, and it's been a tough year for companies all around, but no one's willing to lower the bar on what they're expected to do. In fact, they're continuing to raise the bar, and they're saying, well, we have to build this AppSec program now. Oh, we have to start scanning all of these new things out in the cloud that we're going to be responsible for. But they aren't necessarily getting increased budget. And the theme that I'm hearing is do more with less over the course of the year. And the way to do that is through automation and higher quality products that can take care of a lot of like the manual work for you. In general, if you find yourself dumping out stuff from tools into CSV and doing a lot of work in Excel, then there's usually a better way to do things in general. So other things that I've seen over the course of this year, over the hundreds of companies that I talk to on the phone on a day-to-day basis, obviously nowadays remote workers are more and more important. Visibility into what cloud solutions are being used. How do we make sure that we know of all of our AWS accounts or our Azure or Google Compute accounts? How are we sure that we're scanning everything in all of them? How do we know that we're scanning all of our SaaS products? Ephemeral assets has been a huge pain point this year as people transition to more modern infrastructures. There was delivery services are huge right now, right? And one of the big ones came to me and said, hey, we've got this traditional vuln management program and our licensing is exploding because we're spinning up and down about 6,000 new servers a day. And we've also got all these hostless containers and Amazon EKS, and we are lacking visibility into vulnerabilities there. So tracking ephemeral assets and things that are on for minutes or hours at a time or maybe days is a huge problem that we're seeing out there in the wild today that I've seen over the course of this year especially. So securing newer technologies, us in the security profession are always struggling to keep up with the new stuff that's coming out. So containers, runtime assessments, cloud infrastructures, so I partner with AWS personally, and I work with their team on a couple different fronts, and a lot of their products are okay to start with, but when you want to get serious about security, you usually have to go to a security vendor instead of just using the built-in tools that are in, Azure or AWS or Google Compute. Other things that I've seen pop up over the last 2-3 years, golden image pipelines. Instead of hand curating every single EC2 instance, people are now pulling that into a dev pipeline and having it kind of manicured by a DevOps team and manipulating things with Ansible, Chef, and Puppet to control golden images and automate that pipeline with like Jenkins and all that. Modern web applications, huge pain point if you're trying to scan your web apps that your company is making to look for vulns that your developers are accidentally introducing. You got this cool new fancy app, and maybe it's a mobile app or a single page application. Most tools can't scan that. Rapid7 has a tool that can scan that sort of stuff. And then finally, serverless infrastructures as people move towards Lambda functions and CloudFront, another huge gap in security. I also see, it's really hard to prove to your leadership that, you're making progress and you're actually doing a good job when they don't understand the technical stuff. So I'll have just a little bit to talk about that too. So the keys to accomplishing all of this, defense in depth, you need to have overlapping security tools. You don't just rely on a firewall. You have different types of firewalls. You have different types of prevention and detection that work together. You integrate things. You have written down definable, repeatable processes for your SOC, for your vuln management team so that you can scale and add new people, but also so you can automate those processes and support for new technology. So how do you do all of this with less? I'm seeing budgets shrinking. I'm seeing people leave their jobs and they don't replace those people. They don't have time. You've got 15 different tabs open in Chrome and you're wearing the security hat of probably 6 or 7 different people. and you're having to copy and paste between tools or dump to CSV and filter and pivot tables and import somewhere else. And you also don't have time to manage on-prem services or on-prem servers. So the keys to solving this are automation, going with a unified platform. So finding a security vendor that can do more than one thing for you, or finding a SOAR tool that can unify your tools is really useful. Hey, it's great that you've got this point solution that does container runtime assessments, but if you're having to copy and paste that into 4 different other tools, it may be costing you more time than you have. Going for SaaS solutions or especially managed solutions in smaller environments, it's often easier to justify outsourcing managed solutions for that first year and bringing in expertise that you know will stay there and help define processes and best practices. And then you can bring it in-house in year 2 as you build out your program. So Rapid7, like I said, I've been here for 5 years. When I first started, we only did probably 2 of these things. We did application security and vulnerability management. We continue to acquire other companies and create new technologies. We were one of the first ones to the market with user behavior analytics. We now have acquired a couple of other companies like Divi Cloud for cloud security, Command for orchestration and automation. We also have managed services. We've got a research division. So, hey, you don't have budget this year. Hey, that's great. That's fine. You're still welcome to talk to us, or you're welcome to pull our open source data. You know, we run Metasploit framework. You can go to opendata.rapid7.com and you can pull information from our honeypot network or from our internet-wide discovery scans to make sure that you're scanning all of your public assets. You know, developers have probably powered on some stuff that you never knew about, that you're technically responsible for, but no one ever told you about or it's been forgotten about. Those are that Project Sonar data. It's a real conversation starter, as a lot of the practitioners I've talked to have said. Inside IDR, that's on the detection and response side of the house. So that is our next-gen SIM that has built-in user behavior analytics. And so I'll go on to the next slide here. So let's talk like traditional vuln management. This is our bread and butter. This is probably about half of my day on a day-to-day basis is helping people with vuln management issues. How do we transition that old school 20-year-old VM program into something super dynamic that's in the cloud that's changing every 2 minutes? So one thing is you got to secure things as soon as they come online. So we have connectors for AWS and Azure that will automatically scan new assets within 2 minutes of them coming online. And then you can kick off a workflow to automate containment, to fire off a ticket, to find the right remediation owner, to pull down tags from AWS. Oh, the remediation owner is Dave. Well, I can fire off a ServiceNow or a Jira ticket to Dave automatically, or fire off an email or generate a report and send it to somebody. I've got a lot of options that will save the security person time instead of doing that mundane, repetitive work. So you got to catch stuff as soon as it comes online. Cloud assets are probably not going to be there during your Saturday morning scans that your traditional on-prem IT environment, you know, when your servers are going to be on. So the second pain point that we help resolve, accurate license counts. Like that delivery company I was talking about earlier, every day they spin up 6,000 new assets in AWS and then they terminate them overnight. And their VM partner was charging them a lot of money for stuff that was no longer online anymore. And they were having to do a lot of work over the API and manually to clean things up. So our tool allows you to keep the history, but you don't have to pay for that information. So yes, we realize when something's been terminated in the cloud, we remove it from your license count, but you can still choose to keep the history and keep your trending and your charts and all that sort of stuff. Cloud configuration. So Insight VM also has the capability to pull in not just traditional vuln management stuff like operating system vulns, third-party vulns, policy, configuration, all of that like PCI compliance, but also, hey, do I have leaky buckets? Am I misconfigured on from the CIS best practices for AWS? Do I have bad security rules that open up RDP or SSH to the whole internet? Help me remediate those things. So we have that capability in the product too. We have a point solution we acquired about 8 months ago called DivvyCloud that I'll be talking more about in a minute. Also container image. So as VM shifts towards the more DevOps mindset rather than the scan and patch mindset, it's important to scan things as soon as they come online and hopefully before they get deployed. So container image risk, our tool, Insight VM inside the same tool, same interface. At no additional add-on, module, or cost, you can scan an unlimited number of container images. So as developers are checking in new container images before they even go live, you can assess them and find vulnerabilities in them. And then finally, dealing with that backlog and picking out the needles in the haystack of what you're actually going to get around to remediating on a week-to-week or month-to-month basis. We significantly reduce, if not eliminate, the need for Excel and research, so that our research team is already taking care of calculating the attack surface area associated with every vulnerability. And then it rolls that up and says, hey, if you've got time to make 5 changes this month or 10 for team number 7, here are the 5 changes that will reduce the attack surface area the most in your environment. It would, these 20 changes would reduce attack surface area by 80%. And it calculates all of this quantitatively based off of the attacker's capability, but also the business context. So Insight IDR, and I'll be stopping for the last 5 minutes. I know I'm talking a lot. Thanks for your patience. So the last 5 minutes, we will have Q&A. So Insight IDR, so Insight VM, all about prevention, closing the loopholes before the bad guys get there. But Defense in Depth says don't ever rely on just one control. You need to have layered defense. We need to assume that they'll breach and they'll get inside my environment. So Insight IDR is all about monitoring your employees' accounts, because when our pen testers, that we conduct 1,000 to 2,000 pen tests per year, and general research out there suggests one of the top things that attackers do these days is lateral movement. I compromise one system's, I compromise somebody's laptop. They clicked a link in an email, they opened a PDF, or I stole their password or something, and then I'll scrape the device for the administrator's password because they were on there 6 months ago, and then, or a service account, and then I'll move and I'll privilege escalate, and I'll start to move throughout the company and switching employees and privilege escalating until I have probably an IT admin or some sort of, someone in the finance department, and then I can start transferring money or altering things or stealing intellectual property or knocking machines offline. So lateral movement is one of the key things in user behavior analytics, to study how employees normally do their job, how they move about the network, and then looking for deviations from that. So that's what Insight IDR does. It gives you visibility into all of your on-prem assets, all of your remote workers, which is super important these days, even when they're not on the VPN, and all of your cloud assets and SaaS platforms. So if you've got Office 365 or AWS, you still want to keep an eye on who's logging into AWS or Azure. Victor log in from Bulgaria and suddenly start spinning up massive resources in Japan. We don't normally use any resources in Japan. So those sort of things can fire off an alert. And then optionally, you can have triggered containment actions as well to force reset passwords or open up tickets or do lots of other stuff to start triggering containment or track the issue and notify people. Our SIM is cloud-based, so you don't have to manage the dozens of servers. It's a nice predictable cost. We don't license by bandwidth, so there's no terabytes and stuff like that involved. We just count the number of desktops, laptops, and servers that are in. So you can give us a bunch of terabytes of firewall logs. That's fine. The user behavior analytics, one of the key points of value with our SIM is fast time to get it up and running. So the vast majority of our customers see the value in the first 30 to 90 days. So the first 2 weeks, it's tuning itself, and then after that, you might have to do a little bit of tuning, and our deployment services team or managed services team will be taking care of that for you. But then you're up and running. With other tools like Splunk, Splunk's a great DevOps tool, but it's not optimized for security. So to turn it into a security product usually takes 6 to 18 months from the people that I've talked to on the phone. our tool is purposely designed to be a security tool. So it comes with over 100 pre-made rules, thousands of other detections that it can do, including down on the endpoint. But you can also customize and build your own custom rules. And finally, DivvyCloud. So DivvyCloud is our newest acquisition made earlier this year. DivvyCloud is really like the front lines of how people are using multi-cloud today. So people are going multi-cloud for redundancy and for different use cases. So, you know, you work for a company and the DevOps team really loves Amazon because they can scale. They've got all these features that allow them to scale and cost advantages with Amazon. But the IT team really loves Azure because it's super Microsoft. It's integrated with Active Directory. They can easily migrate all of their infrastructure up there. And the development team, they probably love either Azure or GCP. So we've got customers that are spread across multiple cloud providers. They're using Kubernetes from the DevOps team, and they've got, you know, when they're a small company, they've got 1 to 5 AWS accounts and maybe 1 Azure account. The medium-sized companies have dozens. The larger companies have hundreds, and the really mature companies are using Terraform to automatically spin up a new AWS account and tear it down in a matter of hours. But we still, that's attack surface area. We still need visibility to see, I need to make sure I'm scanning all of my AWS accounts. And Azure. I've got them in different organizations. I need everything in my company to conform to one single policy. And that's what DivvyCloud does, is allows you to define policies across different AWS organizations, across different cloud providers. So, I've got 5 different cloud providers. That's fine. I can define one set of policies and it will apply to all of my hundreds of different accounts automatically. And I'll pull that information in, and then I can take enforcement actions and write little bots that notify somebody. They Slack me. So for example, I've got one that monitors, I don't want to run up my own personal AWS bill or Azure bill or GCP. And so what it does is it monitors my AWS, Azure, and GCP. And if I spin up an EC2 instance, or I spin up a virtual machine and it sees that it's been on during the afternoon, every night at 11 o'clock, it'll say, I'm gonna stop Azure, or if it's GCP. I have one policy defined, and then I say, I want this to happen when this happens. And I don't care which platform it's on. So it's platform agnostic. It's like truly multi-cloud. And the bots are super cool because you can customize steps for notifications, for containment, for reactions to certain events. Like someone powers on a SSH server that is open to the internet. I can automatically reset that security group rule to lock down that server. And I could fire off a notification over Slack or Microsoft Teams or a ServiceNow ticket or an email as well. And then, finally, Inside AppSec. So this is our DAST tool. It crawls and attacks your live web applications in a development or production environment. We've been the top-rated DAST tool for application scanning for the last 3 years by Gartner, if you look us up. People choose us because we can scan those modern environments. So, hey, you've got a fancy web application that uses single-page applications or new JavaScript frameworks, or an API. Yes, we can still scan that. We can also be integrated with your DevOps pipeline for like Azure DevOps. And it cuts back on the amount of back and forth that you have to do with your devs, because it shows them the proof and allows them to retest without having to bug you in the security department or anyone else. And then Insight Connect, this is the tool that ties everything together. This is a really cool thing, because 20 years ago when I was writing automation code, I would have done anything for a tool like this. So, do more with less. People in the security department are being asked to automate things and build integrations, but they don't have coding backgrounds. They don't have experience writing Python or whatever. And then there's turnover in the department, and someone from the IT or security department writes an integration in Perl or something, or Ruby or whatever, and then they leave the company 9 months later, and then it breaks, and then who are you going to call to fix it? The pain point here is building integrations, it's really difficult to maintain, and it requires a high skill level to do it. So what we've done is we've built a SOAR tool, Security Orchestration, Automation, and Response tool, that allows people in security departments without a coding background to draw a flowchart diagram of what they want the integration to look like, and then it takes care of writing the code for you. So it will build integrations between anything with an API, a PowerShell module, or a PowerShell script, or a Python module, and go and build this connection and build logic and loops and all that sort of stuff. So, you know, anything that's a mundane task that you're doing can be automated. A lot of my customers like to automate it with Teams and Slack. So, oh, hey, the SIM saw such and such happen. And, I want to go ahead and I want the tool to go ahead and do research on this suspicious IP address or this user or this file that somebody opened. Go ahead and do all of the mundane stuff of pasting the hash into VirusTotal and do that for me. Go ahead and investigate this phishing email. And important thing to note here, this Insight Connect, you don't have to own any other Rapid7 products. We have integrations with 300 different IT and security tools that are not Rapid7 associated. So stuff like AWS, Azure, GCP, we have integrations already built for them. So that if something suspicious starts happening in the cloud, the tool can automatically detect it, do some research, and then propose a couple of different paths forward to you in Slack or Teams and say, hey, this happened. I did some more research and I found this information. Which way do you want me to go? Left, middle, or right? And then it will go and, mark that as a false positive, or, contain and change the security group rules on an EC2 instance, or open a ticket, or lock a user, or reset their account or something. So it makes it a lot easier to just work naturally and get rid of the mundane stuff and repetitive stuff. So this is how you do more with less, is by automating, but automating without having to write code. And so that's it for my time in the presentation. I just want to leave the rest of the time for Q&A. So does anybody have any questions?
Absolutely, Tim. We do have questions for you. While we do that, I'm just going to bring up the poll that we always show here at the end of our presentations to ask the audience out there, what additional information would you like about Rapid7? And we'll just leave that up. So lots of questions coming in, Tim, here in the Q&A. I've been sorting those into your folder. First question I see I wanted to ask you is, and there's a question here that corresponds, a couple of questions that correspond with this is, basically, what's the most unique thing about Rapid7 and specifically around reporting? Like, what makes Rapid7 unique in the industry?
Okay. So we're top ranked. If you look at the CIS benchmarks, we provide more coverage than anybody else. So for the last several years, hey, look, if you're looking for a security partner, Rapid7, if you want to have fewer vendors to deal with and more support through a single unified platform, then Rapid7's the company to go with. We're also best of breed and in the Gartner Magic Quadrant for pretty much everything that we make too. So we make really high quality stuff. And in terms of reporting, I think our UX department does a really good job at interviewing our customers, trying to figure out how they do their job and saving time on, like I said earlier, if you're exporting to CSV with your current tool, with your SIM, with your AppSec tool, with your VM tool especially, contextualizing the risk associated with an incident or with a CVE or whatever, like our research department, which publishes tons of papers every year, adds context onto these vulns, onto these incidents, and so you can see kind of a bit more information beyond just kind of a CSV dump about why is this important and why should I care about this.
Got it. Excellent. Another question here from Rick. He's asking specifically back to the reporting, how customizable are the reports?
So it depends on which project. Insight VM, so we use the term report to mean kind of snapshot in time, usually like a PDF or HTML file or something. With Insight VM, the reports can be, there's a bunch of different custom-made or pre-made ones. You can customize them. There's customizable dashboards. You can go as far if you want to, but you shouldn't have too often as SQL and you have full database access. So I had a healthcare customer in Alabama a couple of years ago that had their own proprietary risk scoring algorithm that they needed to keep all of their reports in order to transition to us. And so during the POC, I built their existing report identical. It calculated the exact same way in SQL for them. So it can get super customizable on the Insight VM front. And then, the other tools certainly have customizable reports, but you'd have to name a particular one, and then I could talk about its capabilities.
Excellent. Cool. I like that. Customization is always good. Here's another question. Where can I get more details about DivvyCloud? They say it looks interesting.
I would say click the thing. I don't know how the EcoCast works, but go through here. You can also go to rapid7.com, and there's more information about DivvyCloud. It's a really cool solution. We're pulling it onto the platform right now. We give demos of it. I give demos of DivvyCloud also. It's really great for multiple accounts, for a large number of accounts, or even a small number of accounts across multiple cloud platforms, and what it can do. It's really neat.
Awesome. Yeah, there's a link there in the handouts tab for everyone out there that takes you to rapid7.com. And I just did it here. If you go up to products, you'll find right there DivvyCloud by Rapid7. And you click on that.
Yep.
And you can click Get More Information, which takes you to a quick little form. You can also click Try Now, and I'm sure that will set up some sort of demo process. So
yep.
Cool. Lots of options there. Yeah, let's see. Next question they're asking is, can the Insight platform help secure the remote workforce?
Yeah. So our agent. Like I said earlier, you're probably looking for a security partner that does more than one thing and can unify things. And I know that people have pain points around. I've got 17 different agents. I've got one for this and one for that. So we've got a unified agent for our portfolio for log gathering, for security and event management, for endpoint detection and response, and for vulnerability management and file integrity monitoring. So it does all of those things. And the nice part is all you have to do is push that agent out to those remote workers. And even if they never log on to the VPN ever again, you're still streaming many times per day vulnerability information, configuration, compliance information, logs, security events. You're setting traps on the endpoint. You're setting like fake passwords in RAM so that if a tool scrapes RAM for passwords, it watches that and fires off an alert. If an attacker compromises the endpoint and quietly creates a local user to avoid Active Directory, our tool catches that as well and reports on it. So for remote workers who are never on the VPN, and it works if they're on the VPN too, our agent works extremely well.
Nice.
And for ones that aren't, when they do connect to the VPN, like Insight VM has, if you don't have an agent installed, agent's totally optional. It's not required at all. As soon as someone connects to the VPN, we can tail those logs and trigger a scan on anyone who joins the VPN immediately through Insight VM with our DHCP integration.
Awesome. Yeah, that's going to be really helpful for, as more and more companies are moving, of course, remote for the long term. So that's going to be super important. Another question, I like this. They're asking, is there one trend that you're seeing over at Rapid7 that you feel like all security professionals should be keeping an eye on?
Oh, one trend everyone should be keeping an eye on. Geez, that's a tough question. One single trend.
Maybe the top trend.
A top trend, I think going managed service is probably the top trend right now. That departments aren't getting the right type of budget to bring on an extra full-time employee. And when they do, the employees are cycling through because they can get raises by leaving. And so managed services is probably what I see a lot of people looking for, because it guarantees a team of experts that will stay there for years on end with an individual company, and also advise on best practices, which a lot of people are struggling with. Like, sure, you may hire somebody that's like awesome at Nessus or Security Center, but can they navigate the political difficulties of dealing with the developers of the IT team? And can they evolve the reporting structure? Maybe they're super great at tools, but you may need expertise at dealing with management or other departments or something and defining best practices and evolving your dashboards or process. And I think managed services across the board from quality vendors are really spiking right now from what I'm seeing.
Interesting, very interesting. Managed services. Okay, I can see where that could be beneficial for so many companies who struggle, to keep the right talent. And so managed services really solves that problem.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, I'm afraid that's all the time we have in our live Q&A here, Tim. There's many more questions I've placed for you there in the queue. If you have time to check those out and respond, that would be great. We appreciate your excellent presentation today. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thanks everyone for listening. Thanks for coming.
And thank you to Rapid7. For more information, go to the Handouts tab and click on the Rapid7 link. And you can click on Try It Now once you get there and learn more about Rapid7. And with that, it's time to keep the EcoCast moving here. I'm excited now to introduce you to our next presenter. Welcome, Mr. Bill Gerling, Technical Product Manager at Rubrik. Bill, are you there?
I'm here, David. How are you?
Doing great. Doing good. Thanks for being on. Take it away.
Thanks for having me. Hey, y'all. My name is Bill Gerling. As David said, I'm a Technical Product Manager here at Rubrik. And today we are going to talk about the journey to the cloud, hybrid cloud architectures, and how data protection can kind of act as a force multiplier as opposed to a boat anchor in these environments. So what I'm going to cover today is sort of how we got here, the impetus for the journey to the public cloud. I'm going to talk about some patterns in public cloud adoption, both migration patterns and architecture patterns that are pretty common. And then I'm going to talk briefly about data protection, how these patterns and sort of these value props that drive folks to the cloud may apply to data protection efforts, and how we feel, we here at Rubrik feel like you can get more out of your data protection assets, especially in multi-cloud and hybrid cloud architectures. So to begin with, let's start with how did we get here, right? Why do folks adopt public cloud platforms to start with? So oftentimes you will hear the manufacturers, supporters of these platforms advertise that you can get speed to market very, very rapidly out of these platforms. They're API-driven, ubiquitous resources that can be provisioned sort of on demand and readily and quickly available to you. Similarly, those resources are available across the globe, right? The smallest of small companies, a teenager in their basement even, developing an application can deploy that application globally on one of these public cloud platforms with little to no effort. Scale is also important because scale brings resiliency and scale also brings cost economics. And so being able to take advantage of the scale of these platforms in some capacity offers up big benefits to smaller shops or even mid-sized shops these days. Resiliency tends to come with scale, right? So you look at like S3 as a service, for instance, 11.9s. That's pretty dang resilient and hard to reproduce on your own. And then pay as you go. The OpEx billing model, the sort of utility billing model, can certainly be useful, and it can reduce costs. There's the asterisk on the end of that, because you definitely need to be well architected and prepared to architect these platforms to really get the cost benefit out of it. Moving on. Let's talk about the shared responsibility model. So in these public cloud platforms, while they are sort of architected, deployed, and maintained by the various providers, it is a shared responsibility, and that means that as a consumer of these platforms, whether you're consuming, SaaS, IaaS, PaaS, some other hybrid flavor, at some level of the stack, you got to take ownership for your resources, and most importantly, almost always, data protection is your responsibility. And so there's this constant dichotomy where you sort of trade off responsibility to the cloud provider, typically in exchange for cost, but at some level, there's consensus here across the big three that you're responsible for protecting your own data, and that can be accomplished through a number of vectors, right? It can be accomplished with native services. It can be accomplished with third-party services. It can be accomplished with sort of a heterogeneous mixture of the two. And hybrid and multi-cloud is almost inevitable. So this is a quote that I like to use from an analyst who I follow and I like to read. Lydia, she's super sharp. And the premise here is that that multi-cloud is sort of this lumbering gelatinous cube that is attacking organizations, right? And they've essentially got the choice whether to plan for the attack and have a strategy to sort of adopt multiple clouds and hybrid cloud architectures, or they can kid themselves and sort of let it happen organically as this thing eclipses them. And so the point here being, don't be afraid of being hybrid. Don't be afraid of being multi-cloud. It sort of comes organically in some capacity to everyone, and it's best kind of to attack it on the front end through rigorous planning, dependency mapping, org structures, et cetera. And so that's what gets us into kind of the journey of the public cloud, right? We've talked kind of about the drivers and the fact that that hybrid or multi-cloud may be some sort of inevitability, but how do we adopt these platforms? How do we migrate to these platforms? What sort of patterns do I see in the wild? And first, we're getting applications up into the platform to begin with. So this is predicated on the assumption customers got some workloads in the data center. I want to take some of those workloads. I want to put them in a public cloud platform, right? And so this is actually an example of the 6 R's from Amazon, where they have a bunch of different paths that you can take in order to move an application into their cloud platform. And so number one is rehosting, right? And so this is probably familiar to most, lifting and shifting the application in its current state into a cloud platform. Generally speaking, you're thinking VMs here, usually. Another option would be replatforming, or otherwise known as tinker and shifting, right? So the canonical example here is taking a database that's in a VM or on a server on-prem and sticking it in a PaaS offering. Repurchasing, I'm calling it SaaSifying, because oftentimes SaaS is the alternative to the current application implementation. So you could think of this as maybe deciding that you're just going to migrate Exchange into O365 and buy a new offering to support your collaboration efforts there. Re-architecting, refactoring, this is actually peeling back layers of the application and then building the application for a cloud native architecture. So think taking like a monolith, decomposing it into microservices, maybe containerizing components of the application and putting it on a cloud platform. I'm calling this one the right way because it gets you all that agility. It gets you all of that, the cost efficiencies that you're typically striving for in these platforms. And then there's other options that are less migration-y and more just, get rid of it or do nothing. So number one is retire. The application is going to go away anyhow. So maybe we just decide to decom it at some inflection point. And then lastly, retaining. I call it sweet business as usual. And, you're going to likely have existing investments in some sort of infrastructure, application architecture outside of these migration efforts. And if those are sunk costs and the apps are running well, maybe you decide business as usual is okay for the time being. The net of it is that this approach is kind of the easy one. It's very, very simple to lift and shift VMs into the cloud platform. But this approach is what I'm going to call nirvana. It's the way to kind of squeeze good to the last drop out of your cloud platform. And almost always, there's a litany of these approaches employed during a migration effort. So how do we bridge the gap? How do we begin to prepare for cloud migration while not sort of overcommitting ourselves and foregoing business as usual and keeping the lights on? These are some things that you can do when you go to adopt a public cloud strategy, and you can begin doing them today in the data center. And they're really, really good ways to kind of hedge and prepare for cloud implementation or a cloud migration effort. Number one piece of advice that I have is always start with visibility. You've had a lot of folks on the EcoCast today that can help you with that. And that means discovering and documenting not only your infrastructure and your applications and their dependencies, but also any third-party services that might be in scope, managed services, so on and so forth. Also, you're going to want to create a plan to adopt cloud services. So that means having sort of a defined approach and decision-making process for deploying workloads onto various platforms, for deciding what platforms might be used, what sort of echelon or level of services might be used and supported. Having a plan and a framework for making these decisions is very, very important. Otherwise, things are just going to kind of land where they land. Developers are going to stick stuff somewhere. Application teams are going to stick stuff elsewhere, and you're going to end up sort of organically sprawling. build a team of stakeholders focused on cloud adoption strategy and governance, right? So we don't want to sprawl. We want to have a plan. You have to have the right people involved in building and executing the plan, or else they will circumvent the plan. Strive to be well architected out of the cloud. So outside of the cloud, I should say, outside of the public cloud. So there's these well architected frameworks from the public cloud providers. They typically have 5 pillars. I'll show it on a future slide here, examples. And looking at those frameworks and some of the operating models and sort of technology deployment, lifecycle and management models that they suggest is a great way to prepare yourself to be cloudy. Because if you start doing infrastructure as code, if you start doing CI/CD, if you start instrumenting telemetry everywhere in your processes, then when you go to adopt a cloud platform, it's almost going to feel seamless because they're built for these operating models. And then once you've sort of achieved the above stuff, you can find low-hanging fruit, right? So find easy projects where you can stick workloads in the cloud and begin to familiarize yourself. Typically, these are low-impact workloads with low complexity that lets you get your feet wet with a high degree of comfort. And don't be afraid to experiment. If you've got cool projects, new applications, whatever, like once you've got the governance and the decision-making frameworks in place, the cloud is meant to be a place where you can try new things, fail fast, and back them out if something goes wrong. Hybrid is the new normal. If you've got existing infrastructure investments, they don't all have to go in the trash just because you're using a cloud platform as well. Even the big three have sort of acknowledged that hybrid architectures are very, very common and will be for some time. Of course, they encourage wider adoption of their platforms, but if you've got applications that run well, that are in a data center that's well run, and you've got existing investments and skill sets and technology, don't be afraid to use both approaches. So where does data protection play relative to being well architected? There's more to it, but I like to throw these bullets up there just because they were the ones that immediately came to mind while I was building these slides, and they're fun things to talk about. So number one, defining requirements. From a data protection perspective, this is RPO and RTO. Know what applications consist of what components, how they're dependent on one another, and what the RPO and RTO for each of these applications is. Build flexible and automated deployment capabilities. So this is more sort of riffing on automation, CI/CD, infra as code, all of that. Instrument for visibility everywhere. So it's way easier to build visibility when you start building a process than it is to back visibility into a process that's already been established. A lot of times you may think, I'll work that in later on. It's most important that I get the core functionality out the door today. But certain types of technical debt can be really, really difficult to make up. And instrumenting for visibility when the process is simple is something that I would highly suggest. Plan and design for failure and respond to failures and disasters kind of go hand in hand here, right? Like things will fail. You do have some responsibility when things fail to your customers, internal or external or both. And so having a plan for failure scenarios is sort of table stakes, right? We talk about chaos engineering in the cloud all the time because we want to plan and design for failures. Then account management and separation comes into play all the time because less mature cloud consumers may think they only need one cloud account or one subscription or what have you. But in all honesty, it's probably the most logical boundary right now from an identity and access management standpoint. And so it's often the case where you see a cloud account for each application team, or maybe 2 or 3 for each application team, so that they can have test and dev and prod and what have you. So let's talk about data protection in the cloud and why it's tricky, especially in hybrid architectures. You've got all these silos here. These silos on the left, the remote office, the managed data center, and the private cloud, those are probably pretty familiar. But you've also got now one or more, typically more cloud providers that you've also got to plan for how you're going to protect workloads there. The policies tend to be different in the tooling that is sort of organic to each of these environments. Recovery can be a different process across these boundaries. Reporting and auditing can be very, very tricky because you end up having to ETL and normalize the data sets for reporting purposes. And then it gets exasperated when you zoom in. So you zoom in and you see that within each of these environments, there may even be further segmentation from a data management perspective. You may have fragmented stuff in the data center for protecting various workloads there, application teams doing things specific to their applications or their databases, folks on cloud teams running cloud native services or a hodgepodge of cloud native services and third-party services to protect things that the cloud native services can't protect. And so what we say is that this is not acceptable, right? Like operational backup and recovery is something that people feel like they need to have, but oftentimes don't even want to have to deal with. And that's just no way to live and no way to operate. And so what we say is let's simplify the stack. let's build an elegant, modern data protection solution that is capable of traversing these boundaries, that makes operational backup and recovery easy, and then that adds sort of an ancillary benefit of providing intelligence on top of your operational backup and recovery workflows. And that's what Rubrik is sort of here to position and represent today. So what do we do? First of all, we like to unify silos, right? So we are a single solution, a single pane of glass, and a single set of APIs for data protection on-prem, at the edge, and in the cloud. We protect workloads using what we call an SLA domain policy, which is a declarative policy or a policy document that just states RPO and RTO. How frequent would you like to protect something? How long would you like to retain copies of that data? Where would you like that data to live at various points in times? When would you like protection to occur? So on and so forth. We offer up instant recovery in the data center, and then rapid orchestrated recovery for workloads in the public cloud. Instant recovery for certain workloads in the public cloud as well. And this is all driven through a simple, clean UI with API hooks underneath that you can latch into real easy. Security, table stakes, right? Encryption in flight, encryption at rest, and file system that is immune to ransomware, so on and so forth. And then from a cloud perspective, just doing things natively and without infrastructure wherever we can, right? There are times that we need to employ lift and shift models to protect certain workloads, but to be candid, the vast majority of our cloud native only API calls with ephemeral workers whenever we need to run workers. And so we really, really strive when we operate in these environments to operate in a way that is native in terms of look and feel in each of these platforms. So what do we do? Number one, from a cloud perspective, protecting data center workloads, archiving that to a cloud platform for long-term retention. We've been doing this for a number of years now. We're quite good at it. We've got manners by which we can extract cost efficiencies from these workflows, manners by which we can speed up, archive and recovery operations. And it's really sort of a cornerstone of what we've been doing as a company in the data center since day one. Cloud instantiation, essentially lifting and shifting any VMs that may have been protected and archived as a part of the previous workflow that I described. This can be great for test dev, migration efforts, even as a component of a DR strategy. This is essentially a managed lift and shift of a vSphere VM or a Hyper-V VM into one of these public cloud platforms. And then, as I just described, cloud native protection through Polaris, our SaaS control plane. This is our unified control plane where all of our capabilities are sort of amalgamated together and presented to the end user. So some things we do in pure SaaS, right? The things that are cloudy and where it makes sense to do them in pure SaaS. Some things we do co-located with the workload with infrastructure, for example, protecting on-premises virtual machines or physical servers. But then we sort of unify all this together in Polaris. And Polaris is the control plane that, with regards to cloud native protection, is responsible for all of the operations, be it actual protection of things, recoveries, monitoring, reporting, et cetera, et cetera. It is the brains of the operation when it comes to cloud native protection. As I mentioned, with regards to cloud outs or the archive capability here, this is something that we've been doing for quite a long time. It's incremental in nature. Data is encrypted before it's transmitted. Metadata co-located in the archive. This is really just a best practices sort of long-term retention in object in the public cloud play, and it's something that we've sort of honed over the years of producing it. We're good stewards of your bandwidth here. We are always striving to do things as rapidly as possible through parallelism, and we are always keeping things encrypted both in flight and at rest in this architecture. With regards to the lift and shift, like I said, it's sort of predicated on that archive workflow that I just described. It uses workers up in the cloud platform itself to do incremental conversions and launches of VMs up into the cloud platform. So the nice thing there is that we do a first goal, and then we can incrementally convert and launch subsequent snapshots of the same virtual machine into the cloud. We can do this either automatically through policy, or we can do it on demand. When we do it automatically through policy, we actually leave an image behind as opposed to a running VM. It's cheaper to store that, and then you can, instantiate from that image at your leisure, either through Rubrik or organically through the cloud platform. And then cloud native protection. We talked about this a little bit, right? So we do quick start here with automated account mapping and discovery. We orchestrate the creation of our service principals in sort of best practices manner. And then we automatically iterate workloads into our platform so that you can begin creating and assigning policies. Our policies are declarative, as stated before, and can automatically be assigned to workloads as they're provisioned and built through tag rules or by assigning policies to whole accounts. They can also be assigned individually to workloads as you see fit, either through our UI or our API. Additionally, we've got, sort of orchestrated and rapid recovery is what I'll call it. So we can replicate across regions today. We can search within cloud native snapshots and recover single files. We orchestrate recovery in place for instances, and we orchestrate recovery in place for volumes as well. Elastic compute. So when we do need to run compute in a customer's tenant for some reason, we seek to do so in an elastic and ephemeral way. And that's what this bullet means. Anytime compute is run, it is run temporarily. It executes some sort of activity, and then it is torn down when that activity is done. This is converse to some other architectures that you may see in the space where persistent compute is required running in the customer's tenant to protect workloads there. And then lastly, archiving in your cloud. So in this architecture, everything that we do stays in your account or in your tenant. So this is the reason why we may run a worker there from time to time, because we are not in the data path in this architecture. Instead, we are just an orchestrator, a cataloger, a reporter, et cetera, et cetera. We're a control plane, a data manager. We're not a storage subsystem, and we don't really seek to be. Instead, we seek to just use the best approach to manage operational backup and recovery, and then our ancillary capabilities in whatever platform we're protecting. In the cloud, this is obviously best suited via API calls and platform native constructs. So yeah, just to kind of delve into the icing on the cake here, I know we've just got 1 minute left, but essentially the net of it is that operational backup and recovery is the foundation for everything we do. We build a metadata ledger out of those operational backup and recovery activities. That metadata ledger allows us to build applications on top of the metadata that can add value to your business and your organization outside of just backing workloads up and recovering when there's a failure. And the types of things that we can do here are pretty cool. So we can do data protection, which is great since that's kind of what the company was founded on. But we can also run data governance workflows and detect whether or not data has spilled over some boundary by looking at backup metadata. We can run data assurance workflows or integrity workflows and ensure that workloads haven't been impacted by ransomware. And if they have, then we can sort of identify that blast radius and help you orchestrate recovery. We can take data sets and move them across boundaries and rehydrate them into different architectures and things of that nature. Cloud On's an example, being able to take on-premises databases off of physicals and stick them in IaaS is an example. So there's a lot of cool ways that we can move data around and allow you to get value out of these backups that are probably already going to a cloud repository somewhere anyway. And so that's kind of where the terminology comes from, where we call it, multi-cloud data management or data control. We see ourselves as very, very good at operational backup and recovery, making that super simple for our customers, and then trying to build intelligence and value on top of that. With that, I'm set. I believe David should be on the line.
Absolutely, yeah. Great presentation, Bill, as always.
Thank you.
We do have some questions for you. While we do that, I'm just going to bring up the poll, or you brought up the poll. Thank you.
Sorry.
Oh, the poll says, what additional information would you like about the Rubrik solution? And so we'll just leave that up. I encourage everyone out there in the audience to answer that while we take your questions. So I've been sorting a lot of questions into the queue for you, Bill, while you were presenting. Tons of good questions in there. I'm just going to start with this one. They say, you mentioned being well architected even before adopting cloud platforms. What are some techniques that you've seen employed to make that happen?
Yeah. So I think the whole idea of, I come from an infrastructure background, so I'm going to give you sort of infrastructure guy-centric answers to begin with. But I think the whole idea of taking infrastructure deployment, codifying it as code somehow, take your weapon of choice. I'm a Terraform and Ansible guy personally, and sticking, those templates in a repository with even some rudimentary CI/CD workflows around them is a great way to get started. It can begin as simple as when I build a VM or a set of VMs for an application, I build them in one template, and then I just commit that template to master and deploy that template to my environment. Down the road, it can mature into a full pipeline of activities with dev and test and prod and validations in between the gates and approval processes and what have you. And I think if you can begin to sort of operate in that mode in the day-to-day and become comfortable with those technology stacks and those approaches to building and deploying infrastructure, then once you hit a cloud platform where they tend to be somewhat opinionated about elasticity and automation, you're going to find yourself in a much more comfortable position.
Great advice. Great advice. Thank you. Let's see. Next question. Can Rubrik's data protection policies be used across platforms, or are different policies required for different platforms?
They can be used across platforms.
Nice. All right. Another question, what sort of automation or infrastructure as a code tools do you see utilized when provisioning and managing cloud workloads at scale?
Yeah, so I already sort of alluded to what I personally use. Terraform is definitely an elephant in the room. The HashiCorp folks are just absolutely incredible in that space. I like Ansible for configuration management. You know, you've got Puppet and Chef out there that play with Ansible. You've also got CloudFormation, Azure Resource Manager templates sort of in the Terraform space. So again, I sort of come from more of an infrastructure-centric background, so I tend to think about building infrastructure and VMs. But then as far as CI tools that I see out in the wild, like very, very common, again, this is my opinion and less so the company line, but I personally, I like to use GitLab. We've got a Jenkins environment, which is pretty widely utilized. Circle CI is another one that's pretty easy to get started with. All of them, because of the way that this community kind of works today, all of them tend to be some open source and widely documented and pretty accessible. I would say find an infrastructure provisioning tool that you like, find a configuration management tool that you like, find some sort of source control, and find a CI tool, and just start off and run in the test environment.
Excellent. All right, let's see. We're running out of time here on our Q&A, but I mean, one last question, and that is, for folks out there who want to get started with Rubrik, want to try it out, what do you recommend?
Yeah, obviously our website, www.rubrik.com. There's also a sort of a microsite that we have. It is build.rubrik.com. So that's B as in Bravo, U as in Uniform, I as in India, L as in Lima, D as in Delta, build.rubrik.com. And that houses all of our integrations, our SDKs, infrastructure as code examples, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so I would check out the website, check out more events like this, check out build.rubrik.com. And then, as always, don't be afraid to reach out to local account teams or folks that are active on social media. We're all super friendly and passionate about what we do and would love to talk.
Absolutely. Yeah, you guys do such a great job with resources and education and automation. So thank you for that, and thank you for the great presentation today, Bill.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
For more information on Rubrik, you can check out the link. It's there in your audience console. That will take you to the Rubrik website, and you can get more info there. Thank you to everyone who responded to the poll. I'll just leave that up while I announce our next Amazon $500 gift card prize. That's going to Ryan Klein from California. Congratulations, Ryan Klein from California. One more gift card still to give out on the event today. With that, let's keep this EcoCast moving. I'm excited to introduce you now to our next presenter. Welcome, Mr. Chad Kenny, Vice President and Chief Technologist at Clumio. Chad, are you there?
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me. Can you hear me okay?
Thanks for being on. Yeah, take it away, Chad.
Awesome. Good stuff. Well, excited to spend some time with you guys today, kind of going through a bunch of different concepts, one of which we're going to dig in pretty heavily into, protection of the public cloud. But to start off with, what I thought we'd do is jump into a little bit of the journey that we see most customers going through. And it really kind of hopefully articulates some of the challenges of data protection as we continue to kind of expand along this journey. So, many enterprises, although not all, us included, we actually didn't have a data center to start with, but for many have a data center and, they're running their various different applications and of course get some sort of cloud first mandate to move data to the public cloud or various other SaaS services. The first move in many cases has been SaaS, and this is why actually Clumio was originally created as a SaaS-based offering for protecting an all-cloud world. was there was no re-platforming or moving the legacies in the data center into the cloud, and you can get instantaneous value, which has been nice. The second one we've seen big is the VMware Cloud kind of move, where everyone loves the hypervisor, but they're looking to get rid of the infrastructure overhead. And so VMware Cloud running on AWS or Azure services has been another big initiative. Secondarily, we've seen the infrastructure as a service, kind of really pick up quite a bit, somewhat on the lift and shift side of things, but also on net new development. And then the big one has been recently platform as a service offerings, where database infrastructure has really been moved away from the management of those assets and now moved into a more service-oriented offering. But all of these things kind of start to break data protection altogether. Data protection is different in SaaS than it is in infrastructure as a service, as platform as a service. And so you inherently get kind of three main fundamental challenges that we hear from customers consistently. The first is, I don't want to drag the boat anchor of data protection that existed on-prem into the cloud. And I definitely don't want to have 5 or 6 different tools to protect all of my data. So they're looking for mechanisms to consolidate in a simplistic fashion and be able to see everything in one single pane of glass versus even multiple different tools. Secondarily, there's a bunch of concerns around ransomware and data loss vulnerability, where people are looking to build a air gap solution with high levels of security, but they don't want to go buy like 2 times the amount of hardware that they had previously, and they definitely don't want to replicate things twice, even in the cloud. And then the last part is that backup is only an insurance policy, and so the ability to be able to leverage the data that's been consolidated has been a big one. Now, if you look at the evolution of backup just as a whole, it's gone through quite an interesting journey. And if you look from left to right here, left is a lot of touch points, heavy complexity, and as you go all the way to the right, it's near none. And this evolution has been an interesting one. You have hardware and software that were mixed initially. Some of the new guys on the block came out with backup appliances, which helped consolidate hardware and software together, but really only did much of the value on-prem. And then the third tier here is kind of the somewhat wasteland of solutions that have been trying to tackle how to leverage the cloud, where they either use virtual appliances or use an S3 offload of some sort, which doesn't give you much value from the cloud other than cost reduction. Or the most recent one, which is snapshot managers, who take the primitive of snapshots and just orchestrate them and drag them all around the cloud for you. What we believe is there's just a better approach altogether. First off, building a cloud native. Second, providing a single platform across all those clouds and make it simple and easy to consume instead of having to manage all of these different types of complexities and solutions. And this is exactly where Clumio shines. First, it's incredibly easy to manage. With getting up and running in less than 15 minutes, there's no infrastructure, no hardware to buy, and you can literally just get up and running now. You can do it on public, private, and SaaS-based clouds all in one platform. We continue to add newer and newer data sources. We provide a pay-as-you-go model, so you only pay for what you consume, no more. And there's no limits to restores or no hidden charges around things like egress and all of that other nonsense. You can scale on demand to any size environment. You don't need to scale more nodes or any of that kind of stuff, and you manage none of this infrastructure. It's all running inside of our service instead of inside of your accounts, whether on-prem or in the public cloud. And we provide a true, ultimate security within the platform, where we're highly secure around ISO 27001, SOC 2 Type 1, HIPAA compliant, many, many others. And we do this by securing the platform first. Second, creating one policy that can manage all of the data sets. And then third, there's no delete button, and everything's 100% immutable. So you can pretty much forget about it and not have to deal with the complexities associated to traditional backups. Now, we built this from day one on the cloud, and we started about 3 years ago in 2017. And we had the luxury of not really having to drag some of the legacy code that's been built over the last many, many years into the public cloud, and built this natively in the cloud on native cloud services. And so you'll notice a lot of the stuff we build is Lambda functions that are workflow driven, and we're able to leverage the capabilities of the public cloud for both throughputs and quick metadata access and fine-grained granularity around the restores. But from a customer perspective, we incorporated a bunch of great things to help build a different user experience. For one, we can scale to any size. You don't need to call us and let us know that you're about to back up 200 terabytes of new EBS or EC2 instances that are sitting out there, or a bunch of new RDS. It'll just scale to whatever size is required in order to accommodate that workload. Second, since we've micro-partitioned the application down dramatically into just small functions, we can replace them consistently. So don't wait for the next release of whatever software. We put new code releases out every 2 weeks, and it's just a browser refresh away. You don't need to call and have somebody come out to do an upgrade for you. It also allows us to be very, very focused on the customer experience, and so we can look at a functional level to see what's actually going on to either optimize or resolve issues before a customer even realizes that they're having them. But the big question here is what do we do in the public cloud? And so in the public cloud, the whole world is a bit different. And I know a lot of people try to tackle this with the same methodologies that they did on-prem. But really what the big challenges we see from customers is, one, it's incredibly expensive. Most people are using native, backup solutions, whether it's Azure backup or AWS backup solutions, which utilize snapshots for the most part and become incredibly expensive long-term. Secondarily, most of the assets are actually stored inside the AWS account or Azure account. And from that, you're effectively keeping the same data where all of your backup data is. And this obviously is very problematic just longer term to keep ransomware and the like down. Next is restore complexities. The same things that you used to do on-prem and make it really easy to search is not as easy in the cloud. Let's go through each of these. So the first thing is you've got really 3 main requirements in any enterprise. You got to figure out how you deal with things that go bad, that somebody, let's say, fat fingers a script, deletes a table. You've got to provide some sort of operational recovery, and typically you'll store that for 1 to 30 days, and you need that data to be pretty fast. Secondarily, you need a primary backup solution that's typically outside of the production environment, so that when you lose a production environment, you don't lose the backup too. And then third, you need something for compliance. The legal guys always want to keep things for long term, and you have a lot of compliance requirements to do so. And so you need to either keep that off-site or at least in another location, so that you can get to it even in, let's say, a big site disaster. Each one of these are protecting each other for various different disasters or specific compliance requirements. And the cool part to this whole model is that it's actually been going down in price as time goes on, because the value of the data that's sitting in Iron Mountain is obviously a lot lower than the value of the data that's sitting on that storage array with its various snapshots. But you wouldn't in your wildest dreams actually keep 1 year, let alone 7 years of snapshots on a storage array, not to mention the price would be expensive, but the vulnerabilities would suck as well. But in the cloud, you're kind of given this. I've got snapshots for everything, and I got to figure out how I'm going to do operational recovery, data recovery, and compliance retention. And a lot of backup solutions today are saying, hey, well, we'll just dump this to S3 for cost reduction, but that doesn't help you with the experience of being able to get back to the data that you need quickly. And so if you look at the options that are available to you, you could use the native integrated AWS backup solution as an example, or Azure. You could use one of these fancy snapshot managers that everyone seems to be working on today that, just orchestrate these snapshots for you or dump things down to S3. But there's a ton of limitations to each one of these. AWS backups typically are automating only daily backups, and they're doing more operational recovery. I kind of wish they would call it that. It's very limited on retention, and it's incredibly complex to manage, especially after you go beyond the limited amount of snapshots that are available in the natively integrated way of protecting. The snapshot managers are just an additional cost on what AWS backup pretty much gives you, with some other functionality of being able to dump it to S3. But at the end of the day, you're just kind of keeping the data in the same account at higher costs and not really providing a true service. How these work is, let's say you have a bunch of EBS volumes on an EC2 instance. You snap them for a while, and you figure out they're incredibly expensive. You decide to dump some of these to S3 and realize those things get inflated and even larger when I dump it to S3. Next, you realize that I'm incredibly invulnerable by keeping all my backups in the same account as all my production data. And so you make the next step, which is I'm going to go ahead and replicate this to another account somewhere else and store a bunch of it over there as well to help with compliance or just backup outside my account to reduce vulnerabilities of ransomware or data loss. And lo and behold, you're paying a lot. You've got data floating all over the place, and you get to manage all of this yourself. To make matters worse, to get to the data, let's just say doing a single file restore is not a simple one either. You've got to actually restore the data back into your account, but not at a fine-grained granularity of a file. You've got to restore the entire volume, figure out what point in time you're going to restore it, restore that volume into an EBS instance, or restore the snapshot into an EBS instance, connect that to an EC2 instance, boot it, mount it, find the file, and then download it. And then if you're like me who forgets to delete all of these assets, you get to pay for it for a month while you realize you actually didn't need those up and running. And so we believe there's a much better way to do this than trying to deal with this ridiculous amount of complexity. Secondarily, the cost basis of snapshots go up dramatically over time. And so this becomes more and more problematic. And so what we've been helping customers do first and foremost is reduce the cost model down dramatically so that you can save money. It's the same amount you would have spent, so there's no new budget being spent here, but reduce the cost for you so you can get some significant value on top of those snapshots. We provide various different services in the public cloud. First, we do operational recovery, which is an in-account snapshot that we create. This is the same thing that almost everybody else does out there, and we provide this for free to customers. So if you're interested in trying out Clumio at no cost whatsoever, we can provide the exact same service that many others do out there. Now, when you're looking for a true backup solution, we also ingest those snapshots into an air-gap ransomware protected environment so that you can restore those back to any one of your accounts. So not only are you orchestrating every one of your AWS accounts, but you can also restore to any one of those accounts as well. And we also ingest this into our data lake, which allows you to do long-term retention and record-level retrieval. So you can directly query this via normal SQL commands to pull down the whole database if you'd like, or just parts of it. We've changed also the way of restoring files or VMs or databases or records with just a nice global search with no need to be able to restore anything into the account. And we open up a whole bunch of new facilities of being able to move data across clouds, do disaster recovery, build new test dev environments, or even do cloud transformation you'll see from us in the future. But ransomware is still one of those things that everyone needs to think about as time goes on. And we decided to come up with a new solution for customers to augment even existing backup solutions. And so for customers who have a existing backup solution, let's just say you're running whatever nodes or bricks that are sitting out there in your environment, and you need to create an air-gap solution, instead of buying another set of hardware and securing the network and managing all of that stuff, what we're doing is providing customers a quick 15-minute setup, no hardware required. You can get 30-day retention at a sizable discount and be able to get up and running and be sizably less than what the competition can provide today for a traditional air-gap solution. The way we protect this is through two mechanisms, obviously protecting the data through an air-gap solution and highly securing it via various security mechanisms. But also provide very fine-grained granularity with rapid recovery from the cloud where we can spin up resources incredibly quickly to hydrate the data and then restore it back into the environment. And then secondarily, give you fine-grained granularity and flexible restores. The last part is, trying to get an air-gap solution in the cloud is not an easy one, and it's not a cheap one either. And so what we've built in here as a solution is great cost reduction on top of all this value to reduce the TCO dramatically in comparison to keeping local snapshots, remote snapshots, and then replicating those snapshots. And if you look at this over time, there's dramatic cost savings, as you can see in one of these customers' examples that we have out there. So to showcase real quickly how we manage Ransom Protect, I thought we'd do a quick demo so you can quickly see how this thing gets up and running in your
Showcase how truly simple and easy it is to protect your enterprise from a ransomware attack in mere minutes. So let's say I have a VMware environment and I want to protect it from a ransomware attack. The first thing I'll do is click on VMware, then go to all vCenters, and then click on Connect a new vCenter. What we're doing here is going and deploying a cloud connector, which will do inventory services, dedupe, compress, and encrypt data before it's sent into the Clumio service. What I'm going to do here is plug in the IP address. I can also use the fully qualified domain name. I'll select whether this is a VMware environment on premises or a VMware cloud running in AWS. Once I click next, I'll then be able to copy the link to the OVA, which you'll import into your VMware cluster. And along that workflow, you'll need a token of which can be selected through here. Now, no one likes to watch paint dry, nor does anyone like to watch importing an OVA. So I'm going to click Start Over and actually go to an existing environment that I have out there. Now, in my lab environment, I have currently 51 VMs. Now, I need to protect these from a ransomware attack. So I'm going to go create a new policy. And that policy, I'm going to call it VM Ransom protect. Next, I'm going to select VMware. Inside of here, I can define the retention policy for this backup. Now, I'm going to do this every 4 hours, once a day for 30 days, once a month for, let's say, 12 months, and then I'm going to take also an annual backup for 7 years. Now, I can specify a particular backup window if I like, or even a on-demand backup retention, but I'm going to go ahead and just create the policy and get it up and running. Next, I'm going to go to my VMware environment. I'm going to go to all vCenters, select the environment I'd like to protect, and then go into the entire cluster, and let's just protect the entire thing. I'll go and click the plus to add a new policy, click the VM ransom protect, and go ahead and apply that policy. And you're all done. Now what will happen is the VMs will seed and you'll be protected with a true air gap solution outside of your security sphere that no one can go delete your backups, encrypt your backups, or even get access to your backups. And you can restore this to any environment where there's a cloud connector. Now the question is what if I do get attacked with ransomware? How fast is it for me to be able to restore that data? Well, what's nice about Clumio is you can restore files, directories, or entire VMs and do that to anywhere where a cloud connector exists. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and click on VMs and select my CEO's VM. You'll notice here that I had the ability to be able to do search for particular files. So I'm going to type in final. And this is going to showcase all of the file names where final exists. I'm going to pick this PowerPoint, click next, and it's going to show me every version of this that's available for me to restore. I'm going to go ahead and click this guy. And that's how simple and easy it is to do a file level restore. But let's say you want to do an entire directory. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Browse Files. Go ahead and pick the C drive. Then go and pick Users. Let's say it's public. And let's say I want to actually restore the entire desktop. So go ahead and click this and restore that entire directory. Again, truly simple and easy to be able to get this back fast. Now, if I want to restore an entire VM, I get a bunch of different options. For one, I can restore to a new VM or overwrite the source VM. Let's take a look at the restore to a new VM. I'm going to go ahead and switch to the advanced tab, and you'll notice I have a bunch of different options to play with. For one, let's say that my lab environment was one that was infiltrated with a ransomware attack. I can go ahead and restore this, let's say, to my VMware cloud running in AWS and be able to select all of the subsequent configuration for this and then restore that VM. What's nice here is you can now restore outside the environment it was originally backed up from. Now, let's say I want to actually overwrite the existing source VM back to the original VM that I originally backed up. I now can have a bunch of different options here as well. I can connect it to the VM network, I can power it on, or I can clone that VM so I have access to it even after I've gone and restored it to the VM that's in that same exact cluster. And it's just that simple to be able to restore VMs quickly.
All right, now that you can see how quick and simple and easy it is to get up and running with Clumio, now's an awesome time to test it out. We provide a 30-day no-risk trial, 15 minutes to get up and running. And if you jump over to sas.clumio.com/try-free, you can check out our entire service as part of this, and we're excited for you to test it out. All right, that's my presentation. Thank you very much.
Awesome presentation, Chad. I love the live demo there as well, seeing it in action. That always makes such a big difference. Seeing is believing. So I'm going to paste this link for the free trial in the questions box as well. Make sure everyone has access to that because we're going to move on to the poll question. And we'll just leave this up while we take some questions from the audience. The poll question on the screen, I want to call everyone's attention to what additional info would you like about Clumio? So let's see, first question that came in, Chad, I want to ask you here. They're asking, how does Clumio make it easier to leverage agility and scalability in the cloud?
Yeah, great question. So this is one that we definitely think about heavily even in our own platform. I think one of the things that gets you most agility is just removing a lot of the complexity of managing many of the workflows that we've built for you. And when we kind of talk through the model of data protection, it's not an easy one to manage, especially in one account, but it gets even worse when you look at hundreds of accounts that you may have in the public cloud. And so by providing a quick and easy way to just be able to inventory, discover, and then assign a policy, and all you then have is reporting to make sure everything's working. You've really enabled immense agility to not have to think about these things. From a scalability perspective, we can scale to literally any size environment that's out there. And so enabling the same level of cloud scalability and your data protection as you'd expect from the public cloud providers is exactly what kind of experience we give to our customers.
Excellent. Excellent. I like that. Next question here, Alex is asking, when you say workflow driven, are you referring to technical workflows or business process workflows?
Awesome question, Alex. So the workflows I'm mentioning, so what's cool about building everything in a very micro-partitioned way is we're building in Lambda functions that provide various different types of data processing or data movement within the platform. And what's nice about those is we can orient them into workflows, meaning that they go down a sequence of events for many different mechanisms in the back end. And so by being workflow driven, we can not only utilize these functions in multiple different workflows, we can change out those functions for each workflow, either to optimize or change the way that that function's working. Or secondarily, we can identify challenges or outed, things that have stopped in that workflow very easily by, watching what's going on within each of these. And so these are workflows that we've built in at a functional level on the back end to provide a very different user experience to our customers.
Very nice. Next question, does Clumio manage the importance of the data or integrating? We're integrating from our multiple current systems?
Yeah, good question. So a lot of people ask us about kind of taking their existing backup solution and converting it. We have a couple different options that are in play for it. Obviously, if the environment exists today, we can just back up the environment as it exists. If people have longer term retention, there's a bunch of different mechanisms to do this, of which we either leverage our partners or do it directly with the customer where there's a restore and then ingest into our system. We focus a lot on the public cloud side of the house. And so what you'll see within our existing solution is that we support the protection of EC2 and RDS and of course EBS directly if you'd like. And so we can protect those and kind of augment the existing snapshot solution that they have out there. And then even longer term, actually be able to ingest the snapshots that exist within the customer's AWS accounts.
Excellent. And then here's a question they're asking, can I manage all my AWS accounts in various regions in one view, or do I need to have a separate Clumio instance per account?
Yeah, great question. So we allow you to manage everything in one view, which is pretty awesome. I'd say the one challenge that I saw in this specific industry is you end up having like one solution for like on-prem, one solution for public cloud, and there may be a different solution for SaaS. So we not only allow you to see all of your different platforms in one view, but you can see every single one of your accounts, even across regions, in one view. And this allows you some really cool utility because you can restore data to any of those accounts. So let's say somebody is maliciously accessing one of those accounts and you want to restore a bunch of EBS or EC2 instances into another account. In the restore process, it gives you the ability to see every one of the accounts that you have out there, and you can just restore it into that.
Nice. That's handy, to say the least.
Yeah.
Another question, you might have heard this one before. They say this solution sounds awesome for AWS, but can I do a lot of this with snapshots already today myself?
Yeah, we get this quite a bit. I think everybody feels like it would be fun to script this entire thing until they realize that, obviously compliance and legal and the company as a whole, needs to be up and running based upon this in the event of some sort of disaster. And so securing it and managing this, especially when you look across to different accounts, becomes relatively heavy burden. And if you look at the model we're delivering here, is we're taking the burden off you at lower cost. So you're getting significantly high value, and you're getting that at a lower cost. And if you look at the experience to most users, yeah, you can script the whole thing, but the problem is restores suck, and getting to the data is tough. And how you keep that life cycle managed over time to not make sure you're storing data forever is also, an incredibly tough one to play out. And so we're really just helping customers make life simpler and then reducing the cost that they have.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, backups are so critical. It's not something you want to just rely on, an admin to script for you. You need something that's totally reliable. Next question, what are the various options for restoring data in AWS?
Yeah, great question. So we provide actually very, very fine-grained granularity. This has been a really fun one, especially on RDS. So you obviously can do file level. That's an easy one. You can do global search for that. You can actually do a file system browse in a specific volume or EC2 instance. You can restore the entire EC2 instance or the entire EBS volume, and you can do that across any one of the subsequent accounts. You can even change like the IAM role or the VPC it lands in, or a bunch of other fun stuff, even in the account that it was actually backed up from. And so we give you super fine-grained granularity to change a multitude of different settings on the restore. RDS is actually even cooler. We decouple the database engine from the data itself and then give you a direct query engine to actually query the data to restore at either a record level, the whole database, whatever you'd like. And so you can say select, customer ID and, whatever other field from this database and actually export it as a CSV file so you can get the data directly. And if you need that, let's say for legal compliance, or maybe you just need to restore a particular record that was accidentally updated, you can get it directly from us.
Awesome. Well, Chad, I'm afraid we're out of time in our live Q&A. There's still a lot more questions there in the queue electronically. Maybe you can respond to those. I'm sure the folks would appreciate that. But again, thank you for the excellent demo. We got a lot of good feedback on that and the great presentation. Thanks for being on.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
For more information, as Chad said, visit sas.clumio.com/try-free. I put that link there in the questions box if you want to check it out. Of course, you can also go to clumio.com, and don't forget to check out the handout that's available for download there in your audience console entitled, "Do you know what Cloud First means for your data protection strategy?" All right, and with that, it's time to move on to our next presenter on today's Cloud EcoCast. I'm excited to introduce Mr. David No, Vice President for Products and Engineering at Metallic. David, thanks for being on.
Thanks so much for having me, and thank you everyone for being on today.
Great to have you. Take it away.
Great. Thanks so much. So I'm happy to join everyone today. Thank you very much. We'll be talking a little bit about how Metallic can and is helping our customers on their journey to hybrid cloud. And this is something that is particularly pertinent in this current environment. What we've seen is that customers are really accelerating their cloud journey. I mean, everyone's had a cloud plan over the past few years. I think we're seeing not just lift and shift moves of applications and workloads from on-premises to the cloud. We're looking at some transformational dimensions as well, the adoption of containers and Kubernetes, refactoring of applications. And this has created a number of challenges. Everyone's on a different part of their cloud journey. But I think what is a common theme that we're seeing today is that there are very few customers who are either all on premises or all in the cloud. The vast majority of companies and customers we talk to are somewhere in between. And this is presenting a new set of challenges for them in terms of managing their environments and their data, right? So really what we see is that adopting new cloud technologies, whether it's a SaaS application like Office 365, or whether it's cloud infrastructure or something similar, moving workloads or refactoring the workloads to the cloud, it's creating new data silos. I think customers doing a good job on premises in their own data centers, but now that data is becoming more distributed, not only in applications, but even at the edge with most people still working from home or working remotely, that's really created a whole new slate of challenges for IT professionals. With this distribution of data, especially at the edge, we're seeing a significant increase in cyber attacks, particularly ransomware. And I know this is top of mind for many people. We're seeing a real increase, particularly because the attack surface has increased. The most vulnerable parts of any organization are its laptops. And now everyone is working at home in a way they might never have expected to do so before. And in fact, this is now a permanent situation in many cases. And dealing with this rapidly changing landscape with constrained resources, I think we've all been talking about how we've had to do more with less in the past. And now that's even more true, right? Many companies have been forced to make some tough choices and yet still adapt to a brand new way of working, a brand new set of applications, a brand new set of infrastructure. So how do we address this challenge in an expedient way, right? And I think hybrid cloud lent itself very well to a SaaS data protection solution. I know we've heard about a number of them today, and SaaS is particularly pertinent in a hybrid cloud situation because hybrid cloud tends to be rapidly changing. Data center deployments tend to be fairly static, not a lot of change, but in a transformational mode, there is a ton of it. And so how do you adapt your data protection methodologies while remaining compliant while adapting to the change, right? And SaaS allows you to do that. There's not a lot of upfront investment. You don't have to deploy new infrastructure to support it. It's not hard to deploy. There's very little or nothing, in fact, to install. And so this is something that can really fit well in terms of flexibility when it comes to a rapidly changing landscape. And in fact, for these reasons and others, IDC predicted that data protection as a service would surpass traditional data protection in the next 2 years. That was before the current pandemic. And now with the acceleration of cloud projects, we're hearing that 2-year timelines are now 6-month timelines. I think SaaS is more pertinent than ever, and backup as a service in particular. So how is Metallic addressing this? Metallic has introduced, and you can think of Metallic, we are a part of Commvault, which has been a longtime leader in the data protection space. We've been in the upper right-hand corner of Gartner's Magic Quadrant for the past 9 years running. What we've done is we've taken the technology and knowledge and best practices and experience of Commvault and combine it with the best of SaaS in order to bring out Metallic. Metallic is a cloud-native SaaS solution delivered purely as a service, and this covers the range of data sources that our customers are looking to protect today, not only at the edge, but also server workloads on premises, as well as application workloads in the cloud, in IaaS, as well as in SaaS applications. From the user perspective, we have our laptop, our endpoint data protection solution, which covers laptops and desktops. And we also have our Office 365 backup solution to provide for comprehensive protection for O365, not just Exchange, but not just email, but also SharePoint, OneDrive, Teams. Everywhere where you have data in O365, we cover that. It is a fully featured solution. For endpoints, we cover Windows, Linux, and Macs. And it's easy to deploy, easy to use, easy to manage, and low impact. Those are very interesting, but today what I'd like to focus on is really our hybrid cloud support with three main offerings. Today we have our VM and Kubernetes backup solution to cover on-prem and in the cloud virtualization and containerization. We have Metallic database backup. We have Metallic file and object backup to cover file servers as well as file shares and even more modern types of storage like blob storage. And so how is Metallic different, right? As I mentioned, we've taken the enterprise technology and enterprise experience of Commvault and delivered it in with the best characteristics of SaaS. So you have the performance, the reliability, the security, and particularly the scalability of Commvault technology, and combine that with SaaS simplicity, ease of use, ease of deployment, no infrastructure required, and the inherent capabilities around having an air-gapped solution that is invulnerable to intrusion from a customer's security domain. It's up and running in minutes. It's easy to try. It's easy to buy. And so with this, scalability is an important thing to keep in mind here. Of course, security is top of mind. But what we focused on is scalability not just from a service perspective in that we can handle thousands of customers, that's fine. But what we focused on is how do we bring value to our customers and scale to what they need. And that is we can handle data sets and data sources from our customers at scale from a handful of users to tens of thousands to a terabyte of storage or data to be protected to a petabyte or more. And that's something that we can handle with our architecture on-prem and in the cloud, and that's a big differentiator. We'll talk about that a little bit more. And of course, security is and reliability is of the utmost importance with a service. So, we have our ISO 27001 certification, or SOC 2 Type 2, and for our global customers, we have GDPR compliance and worldwide data residency capabilities. So what does Metallic look like from an architectural perspective in storage? Our customers use our web interface, which is highly focused, simple, easy to use, and we'll see that a little bit later today. We call that the hub, and the Metallic control plane itself runs in the cloud as a pure service, and everything actually can run natively as a pure service. So if you look at Office 365 and endpoints, for Office 365, there's no deployment, and unlimited storage with unlimited retention is included, right? That's not something that you have to specify or provide. Ingress, egress fees, not all of that is included, management, everything. Endpoints are similar. You have unlimited storage with 1 year of retention, and deployment to thousands of laptops is very easy and very quick and simple and highly performant. Now with our cloud workloads, though, and our on-premises workloads, what we found is that customers with a SaaS data protection solution were not just looking to back up to cloud storage that we provided. It's very constraining, right? Our customers often have relationships with Azure, AWS, and they want to use their own storage, right? Also on premises, most other vendors force you to back up to the cloud always. And so what you run into is a natural bottleneck in terms of scalability is limited by your network bandwidth, right? Eventually, no matter how good your compression deduplication is, eventually you're going to run into a problem with network bandwidth. So we introduced a concept that we call SaaS Plus. SaaS Plus means that you can use the storage that you can buy from Metallic. That's perfectly fine. You can bring your own cloud storage from AWS or Azure. We won't charge you for it. That's entirely up to you. You can also, for on-premises workloads, you can keep a full backup copy on-premises in order to have the best scalability, the fastest restores possible. And that's really the trick, right, is that you don't want to have to wait for restores. Backups, that's okay. Those can take, those can run in the background. That takes a little bit of time, but nothing makes people more nervous than having to wait for their data to come back. And so bringing that over the public internet or over the wire from the cloud is fine for smaller workloads. But really having an on-premises copy is what most of the professionals and companies that we spoke to wanted, keeping a copy of their data close to their data sources. And then, of course, having a copy of that data in the cloud for long-term retention and off-site data protection as well. So that's a real copy. It's not a cache. You have full control over how much data you have on premises. That really gives us the best scalability from an on-premises perspective that we can possibly provide. So if we look at each offering in a little bit more detail, Metallic VM and Kubernetes Backup is a comprehensive virtualization data protection solution. We support VMware on premises. We support Hyper-V on premises. We support Azure VMs natively with no deployment required. We also support VNC and AWS. We support AVS. We have also Kubernetes data protection. This is particularly interesting to a lot of customers who are looking at leveraging Kubernetes in some fashion, either through an on-premises deployment of Kubernetes or a cloud hosted version of Kubernetes like AKS or EKS. So this is something that we're particularly proud of. It's one of the first SaaS-based data protection solutions for Kubernetes available. We support all CNCF certified Kubernetes distributions. It supports the cloud versions of Kubernetes also. We have data portability from on-premises to the cloud, and it's complete data protection for Kubernetes, not just persistent volumes, but also applications and all of the metadata that goes along with it that you really need, right? In a Kubernetes application, it's not just the data, it's the app as well. So we provide that functionality, and I'll show that a little bit later in the demo. Database backup. Today we support Microsoft SQL and SAP HANA backups. Now this is really interesting because what we heard is from our customers is that there's a strong push to move SAP into the cloud as well. It's a great workload that Azure, for instance, supports quite well. And having a solution that can cover on-premises as well as cloud instances of these databases is critical for our customers. It really provides you a great way to bridge that hybrid cloud gap. You can cover your on-prem deployments in the same interface, the same methodology as your cloud instances. And this is where SaaS Plus really makes a big difference, right? It's databases that are typically the largest workloads, especially on restore, and having high performance for restores for important databases is critical for your SLAs internally in the business. And then finally, file and object backup. This is to cover file system kinds of data, right? So Windows and Linux file systems. You have you can protect NAS workloads. And what's interesting here is that we also protect more modern cloud-based storage solutions like Azure Blobs and Azure Files. We're one of the first ones to support Azure Blob Backup. And this is something when we see a lot of customers refactoring their applications to run natively in the cloud and to leverage the distributed serverless compute models. Blob storage is a great place to keep persistent data. It's really cheap, it's highly performant, but then you have to protect it, right? It's still data that you have to protect. And so having a service like Azure Blob Backup, where we can natively protect that data with no infrastructure required, has been a huge bonus for our customers. So let's take a look and see what Metallic looks like. So this is the hub. It's as you can see, it's very straightforward and easy to discover the types of applications that you want to support. Here are the 5 offerings I've talked about before, and you can see we have plenty of room for more, and that's all I'll say about that for now. The common functions that you need on a day-to-day basis are right here. You can create support tickets, you can look at documentation, you can manage your users, and you can even chat directly with support right from the hub here. We'll take a look at VM and Kubernetes. As you click on these tiles, what happens is you bring up a new tab for each one, and we remember this, so you can customize your user experience to only the things that you're interested in. Here you can see the day-to-day information that you want as an administrator. It's really easy to see what's happening at a glance. And if we're going to add a new Kubernetes cluster here, it's very, very simple. Everything in Metallic is wizard driven, is wizard flow driven. What this does is it allows us to take what could be potentially complex and intimidating in terms of setting up multiple copies. What should I do, with a workload in the cloud versus one on-prem? And we actually guide you through it. So in this case, I'm going to protect Azure AKS that's in the cloud, so it's a direct cloud-to-cloud backup. On premises, we would have a communications gateway that we call a backup gateway. That allows us to talk to your on-premises resources. Really easy to install, just takes a few minutes. Here you can see it's a 4-step process. That's really it to configure your Kubernetes backup. In this case, I'm going to select a pre-configured storage location which happens to be Azure Storage. If I wanted to configure my own cloud storage, it's quite simple here. I would pick the cloud provider. Here I'll pick an account that I have, and then now I can pick, because it's Azure with AKS, we're directing you to back up to Azure Storage. This helps with avoiding egress fees, right? And this is the kind of thing that we help guide you to do, and it's very easy to provide your credentials, right? In this case, we'll just do an existing location. Here's where we help guide you create a plan for protecting your data. You can have an existing plan that matches the storage characteristics that you provided before, or I can create a new plan. And here's where we provide some good recommendations around what the best practices are in terms of backup frequency and retention. What's interesting about this is that when we first showed this to customers, they said, these are great, but I really want to be able to configure my own plan. Here that is here. What we found is more than 90% of our customers don't, right? They just pick one of our plans. So, I think we've made some good choices and, to bring value to our customers. So I'll pick this here. So let's add my my AKS cluster, right? It's really very, very straightforward, right? So here what we do is I have some configured already, so let's add another one. Let's add my endpoint here. There we go. I'll name it yes, right? And then we'll pick authentication of service account. And then we'll just specify this from my AKS configuration, and then the very, very, very long token. Next, and we will connect and configure that AKS cluster. It's really easy. So what we do is we will establish communications with the cluster, ensure that the credentials are correct, get all the information from the cluster around the applications that it has. And here what we'll do is create an application group. This is a logical grouping of the applications that we have. We'll pick the cluster that I just configured. We'll name this very quickly, right? And then applications, we can browse anything we want. So we allow you to do things like browse with labels, look at volumes. It's really a complete Kubernetes experience. I can pick an application that, or group of applications on the cluster. There's only one on this particular one. And that's it. Click finish. It's ready to do data protection right away. And we'll pull data cloud to cloud. Now, if we want to look at what we can restore, right, let's take a look at restores here. So we'll take a look at one of the clusters. Here's a list of applications. You can actually browse by group or applications themselves. We'll look at this cluster. And here I'll be able to restore any level of data or metadata that I need to restore. So if we're going to do a restore here, see, I can now browse data, volumes and data, or application manifests, right, or full applications. And this is actually interesting because it's not just, as I mentioned before, persistent data, but it is everything that you need to really bring back your Kubernetes app, right? This level of comprehensive protection as well as granular restore is something that we pride ourselves on. It's available for all of the applications that we support. You can protect whole VMs and restore single files without having to have any presence on the VMs at all, right? So VMware, you can back up a whole VM restore single files, and no software is required on the guests. That's just one example, but it's something a theme that we carry through the products in general. So with Kubernetes, I think one thing that's really exciting for us is that we are offering Kubernetes for free. So for the next 6 months, if you purchase at least one 10-pack of VMs, right, which is about, the pricing is right on our website. All you have to do is be a Metallic subscriber, and you get unlimited Kubernetes protection as long as you're a subscriber. Unlimited Kubernetes protection forever. This offer is good for the next 6 months. So if you sign up to become a customer in the next 6 months, you'll get unlimited Kubernetes protection, again, for as long as you're a customer. So in summary, we really focused on supporting our customers, being able to provide great value, giving them capabilities to detect and recover from ransomware, and really enable them to manage their data from a single pane of glass, from a single interface, no matter where they are on their cloud journey, whether they're on-prem, whether they're in the cloud or halfway, what have you. The flexibility that we provide, the ease of deployment, the ease of use is all there. And it's something that we really pride ourselves on in terms of being able to help our customers along the way. And so try it for yourself. You can sign up for a free trial right on the website, metallic.io/trial. Feel free to sign up and test it for yourself. Thank you very much.
Great presentation, David. I really appreciate that, and thank you for taking time to do that live demo. That was really cool. I'm just going to go ahead and paste this link here to metallic.io/trial in the questions box for everyone out there, because we're going to go ahead and move on to the poll question. But I should point out first that the link that you see on your screen right there that's underlined, that is a hyperlink. If you just click on that, that will launch a new tab in your web browser and take you directly to the site. But if we're going to move on here, then you'll find the link in the questions box. And of course, you can also visit metallic.io via the handouts tab to sign up for a free trial for yourself as well. So with that, let's kick off our Q&A here. I've just brought up the poll. What additional information would you like about the Metallic solution? And I'll leave that up while we take some questions. So lots of good questions coming in. The first one I see on the list I wanted to ask you, David, is when we back up our on-prem workloads with Metallic, like virtual machines, databases, will Azure throttle us as they do on Office 365 backups?
That's a great question. So no, absolutely not. So for backups to the cloud, you can use either your own public internet connection, or you can leverage something like ExpressRoute in order to maximize the throughput and the bandwidth available for moving data into the cloud, and we can saturate that link. Of course, you can put in policy to throttle how much bandwidth that we use, but no, it is not throttled in any way.
Okay, excellent. That's good to know. Next question, can backups be written directly to an on-prem Dell EMC or NetApp storage array?
Yes. So that's a great question for in the SaaS Plus model, any block or NAS storage that you'd like to use, including data domain, for instance, even, you can use that for your local backup copy. That's perfectly fine, and it's all supported.
Nice. And then another question they're asking here, when scanning a Windows file server, how does Metallic handle incremental jobs, and does it have to crawl the entire file system each time a backup job is run?
Oh yeah, that's a major concern for a lot of people. We're highly efficient. I mean, we've been doing this for a very, very long time, and we have the capability to use a very, very fast scan, which depends on a tiny local small database, which captures changes over time. That's not to say it's a filter driver. We don't use any drivers to do backups. And so that allows us to capture what's changed over time, and doing incremental backups, identifying what needs to be backed up is extremely fast.
Very nice. I like this question here from Julie. She's asking, how quickly can Metallic backup be up and running? And typically, how many people do you think it would take to manage Metallic?
That's a great question. And so to get Metallic up and running, signing up for a trial, I've done it in less than 5 minutes, 2 minutes of which we're waiting for the email confirmation that my trial was provisioned. And it really depends on, how many servers you're looking to back up, how many VMs you're looking to protect, what have you. But it's very easy to deploy. There's very little to install, and it's all guided for you. In terms of how many people does it take to manage Metallic, it's not many, right? I mean, we are running the service on your behalf. You don't have to worry about service availability. It's really, it takes all the burden, or a vast majority of the burden from our customers and moves it on to us to make sure that everything's running. And so the overall effort is much less.
Excellent. Yeah, I like that. I know, IT pros are overwhelmed on a daily basis. So anything that Metallic can do to help offload that is fantastic. Next question from Paul. He's asking really about, sizing when it comes to getting started with Metallic. Is this a solution that could work for SMBs or smaller kind of startup companies?
Oh, absolutely. So it's great, right? I mean, we're able to take this technology that we've developed that handles many, many petabytes of data at our customers. And we have customers today that have, a handful of servers, a couple terabytes of data, maybe 5 or 10 users. So our customer spectrum starts there, right? And goes all the way to customers with tens of thousands of users and hundreds of terabytes of data. So absolutely.
Excellent. All right. Well, I'm afraid we're running out of time here in today's EcoCast for live Q&A, but I've placed some questions for you there in the queue, David, and we'll be sending those for you. Maybe you can get back to those folks that we didn't have time to answer live. But of course, great demo and great presentation. Thank you for being on the event today.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
And for more information, I encourage you to check out the link that's there in your handouts tab. It says number 7, Metallic. That will take you to a free trial sign up. You just put in your email address, and that'll get you started with the Metallic software as a service backup solution. And super easy to try, easy to use. So I encourage you to check it out. And I'll leave up this poll question for everyone out there while I announce our final Amazon $500 prize winner. This is going to Jacob Stewart from Washington. Congratulations, Jacob Stewart from Washington. I also will be getting back to folks who were selected as the best prize winners today. We had tons of questions, over 300 questions, so thank you so much for those. I'll be selecting the best winners, the 7 best questions, one from each of today's sessions. So we appreciate those questions, and we'll be contacting the winners with a $50 Amazon gift card. Again, thank you, everyone, for joining us. Before you go, don't forget to subscribe to the 10 on Tech podcast, our LinkedIn channel, Twitter, YouTube. We post recordings of all of our events over on YouTube, so make sure you subscribe to that. If you are watching this event and you're a potential sponsor of an upcoming EcoCast or MegaCast, reach out to us at connect@actualtechmedia.com. And with that, I hope to see you on our next event. It's coming up. It's a data protection, DRAS, and disaster recovery MegaCast, where we'll be giving away 5 of the awesome new Mac Minis. After this event ends, you'll be automatically redirected to our events website where you can register for all of our upcoming events. Hope to see you there. Take care and have a great day. Bye-bye.